We'll start with a public comment period. If there's anyone from the public who wants to discuss.
Steve Small, 116 Walcott.
Come on up to the podium, please. So we record, so helps with the.
I'll try to behave myself. This proposal to develop the Girl Scout property, the fact that it's going to come through the existing neighborhood and Highland Drive, that road in places is only 16 feet wide. And I think that house, there's a greenhouse that looks like a barn, sits right there at the gate. That woman's a foster mother, and she has 4 or 5 young kids. And we're just concerned, 46 houses, I'm thinking that's at least 2 trips through there a day per house. And I like the thought of the development, but just going through our neighborhood doesn't make sense. I mean, I talked to Mr. Dye when they did the sewer there in 2019, and I assured, well, I actually didn't donate the property, but I allowed him to get a right-of-way so we could finish that road because there was always a short section of gravel there. And I assured him that when that project started, that he wasn't gonna change our neighborhood, wasn't gonna widen the roads, and they didn't. Only thing they did was widen the sidewalks, but I think they gotta be that way for ADA most likely. But there's 18 houses in that neighborhood, and I've talked to all but 3, and nobody wants all that traffic in that neighborhood. So just want to let you all know that, and hopefully we could find another route there. And my other concern, there's a pond down there that belongs to Wanders. I don't know how they're gonna keep kids out of that, but we'll have to wait and see. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else for public comment? I don't see anyone, so we will move on to item number 3, roundtable discussion amongst council members. Does anybody have, Dave, you have anything for roundtable?
Yeah, on the budget summary from 2 meetings ago, I saw that we're gonna overspend the revenue by about 1.4 million. Is everybody on council okay with that?
I probably need to be directed what I'm looking at before I can just immediately respond.
Sure, I mean, it was the first slide in the budget overview. So general fund revenue was projected at like 8.79 million. General fund expenses are gonna be 10.2 million. So we're about 1.4 million more in expenses we're projecting than revenue for next year.
Just to add a little clarity to that, that includes all the capital expenses, so operationally, we are balanced, we're not in a deficit.
So money coming out of our capital improvement, things that have been planned?
Those are the things that we're proposing at this point.
Yeah. I'm trying to find the.
Come on. Wait, I saw this thing.
Was this just the original budget overview that you're talking about, Dave?
Yeah, from 2
From the
meetings ago.
study session?
2 meetings ago. Budget discussion, there it is. It's not it either.
I give up.
And so our fund balance would still be at that $1 million or higher level using that, right? And that's what previous councils have always agreed to as that general fund balance or that, oops, excuse me. I guess that's what we're discussing through this budget conversations. But if council wants a higher fund balance, and that's something we would need to discuss and explain to staff, and then we would have to look at cutting some of those capital improvement projects. I mean, I think $1 million fund balance is something that is feasible.
And it's above where we have said that we want, or we and past councils have said where they wanted to be. I guess that was why I wasn't as concerned, because we were still maintaining that fund balance above where we said we wanted it to be.
And then I didn't get an answer yet on that $800,000 transfer from another fund. It was labeled MERP. Is that like the retirement plan?
That's for our motor vehicle pool.
MERP is motor vehicle pool?
Yeah, it's the, I can't remember what the acronyms are for that. Oh, yeah, motor and equipment replacement fund.
So we transfer $800,000 out of the motor vehicle pool into the general fund?
I'm not exactly sure which 800 you're talking about to give you an exact answer.
It was in the charges for services breakdown.
I'll look into it and get back with you on that. I don't have that information right at the tip of my tongue right now, so.
Well, it's a big question, right? Like, it's just a transfer from another fund. And I'd asked about it twice in emails.
Dave, what day did you send that email?
It was like 2 weeks ago.
And I believe I responded to all the emails. I didn't get anything back that you weren't satisfied with the answer that I gave you, but
Yeah, I'm looking, because Tracy copied me on them. I'm trying to find it, because I do know that Tracy Stahl did respond to your emails.
Yeah, she just didn't answer my question. But there's transfer from another fund and the charges for services. It was about 800,000.
So Councilmember Redding, I'm going to ask that you just, if you could re-email that to staff and go through me, I will go ahead and I'll make sure you get the exact answer. And then for all council, if I or staff ever respond and you don't get and we weren't clear in our response to you, I know with my emails, I always end it, please call me if you have any questions. I'm not joking with that. Please call if you have questions. So,
But I emailed twice with questions. Just
yeah, I'm
didn't
trying
get
to
an
go
answer.
through to find, because I know Tracy did, I know our finance director did respond to you. And I don't remember seeing a second email from you saying that is not the answer I'm looking for. I need more clarification.
Okay, well, I kind of want that information. I mean, again, this is like, if we're gonna end at 1.3 million, but we're relying on 800,000 from some other fund to be at 1.3 million, I'd like to understand what that is. And I mean, the capital improvement from the city side, gosh, I had to add it up, because total capital improvement costs are like 6 million for next year. And I think just the city expenses is like 2.6 million. And I didn't even add up slide 3 to get there. So we're north of 2.6 million in city expenses for capital improvements. And I get Roundabout is locked in, Ely Street is locked in, but then we got just a ton more capital improvement items in that long list. And I'm looking at those big items, like capital improvement, total funds over,
And the capital improvement budget's
hold
going to
on.
be discussed on April 1st, if council recalls correctly, next Monday.
I'm trying to get council's input on some of these big items that were reviewed already 2 meetings ago. Has everybody accepted these things already?
No, that was
We're
just
all
an
okay with it?
overview, and we set a special meeting so we could discuss that on April 1st.
Yeah, I guess that's when I thought we would kind of talk through that, is on April 1st.
When do we pass the budget?
In May.
May 15th, 45 days before the budget starts, which is July 1st. It's in our city charter.
So the April 1st meeting that I understood was like council goals, and we'd kind of set goals already, but I mean, I guess I'm not sure why we're resisting talking about the budget right now.
In my view, we have a meeting that's just scheduled on April 1st to discuss that. I mean, that was my expectations for that meeting. Teresa had brought up that we hadn't gotten the printed out goals, so we were just gonna kind of review those and see if that's where we are. But those kind of go hand in hand, because there were some things that we had listed that, for example, didn't make the capital improvement overview. But that's in my mind, that's where council's really gonna get into that and determine, do we wanna move forward with these projects? Do we wanna push them out, or what? And again, I'm speaking for myself, but I thought that's what that meeting was gonna be about.
Yeah, that's my understanding. It's on my calendar as capital improvement special meeting. So it was about capital improvements, and also we were gonna review our goals. So it'd probably be a good time to review the capital improvements and see, are we comfortable with that end budget or with that end general fund? And we can review, of course, any transfers as well, if we feel like things are being transferred that shouldn't be, or to get an understanding of why they are being transferred. And if it's the motor pool, I know a lot of that last time was the leasing, because it's all in our lease, so it's a matter of where that's coming out at. So, I'd like to look at it with you, but I think the first is gonna be a better date for me, just because then I'll have all that information in front of me. I'm having to dig back through the budget right now to find that overview. I did find it, and so, yeah. If you have any specifics on it before then that you're looking at, feel free to reach out to me for me to look at, like a specific page or a specific account. I'd be happy to look at it and get an understanding where you're coming from and what's coming in to that meeting, just so that I'm ready to go in the meeting to understand what all we're gonna discuss.
And I would also appreciate that too, so I can have all the information ready for you guys to review, anything that you guys have questions about.
And just so we're clear, the emails that occurred between Councilmember Redding and the Finance Director was on March 11th. The question was asked, what are the municipal service charge and transfer from other fund line items? Municipal service charge is a calculated fee charged to operating funds outside of the general fund. Its purpose is to recoup administrative costs borne by the general fund for services rendered to other funds. That was Tracy's response to Dave, or Councilmember Redding. Councilmember Redding responded, "Thanks, Tracy. Could you please provide the list of fund names and the amounts of both the municipal service charge and the transfer from other funds?" Tracy responded with a spreadsheet showing our charge for services for the 24-25 budget, and no response. I did not see a response from Dave after that one. So the Finance Director did respond to a council member's inquiry.
But so you didn't feel like you got the answer that you were looking for?
I didn't get an answer about the other fund line item. I got a list of charges in the municipal service charge, but I didn't get anything about the other funds. I asked twice.
I guess I missed what you didn't get your answer. What was the other question?
In charges for services, there were two line items. One was municipal service charge, that was about $630,000. The other just said transfer from other funds, that was about $800,000.
That was what you
I
didn't
said,
get.
those two line items, what are they? And I got municipal service charge responses, but no other line item.
The
So I,
MRT or
MERP.
MERP.
And so now I'm just trying to ask, what is that line item? I want to understand what that transfer from other funds is. And I mean, to me, it's weird that's in charges for services when there's a different bucket for transfers. But I'm hoping there's like a clear explanation for that. But it's a big line item, right? 800,000. And so I'm asking just really high-level questions right now, trying to understand where we're gonna land and how that amount of overspend for next year over our revenue is gonna be okay, how we're gonna sustain that over time, and what all we're packing into all the capital improvements this year when we're not gonna do street maintenance. Again, I'm trying to get a read on council, where you guys are at, because a lot of the other stuff about fees and things like that, it's like, that's not really as significant as those big items, right? So if you guys want to talk about it more on April 1st, I think that's great. I feel like we should kind of be talking about it.
I think that's good. Thanks, Dave.
Mhm.
Mike, do you have anything for roundtable?
I'm not sure who the liaison is from the city to the MDOT, but the barricade on 40 South is right up by where they're working, and it should be back further by the roads, so people aren't coming down and doing the jockey around.
Thank you, Mike. Just a quick update. Yeah, that was shared to us also by people that work at Wings of Hope. And so we reached out to Banesh, which is the project engineer for this project for MDOT. And I sent them just a screenshot of an aerial view saying, you have one down here. And that one needs to be down there, so people who live in Bill's neighborhood don't try to sneak out into the construction zone. But we also said, you're going to want to put one up there as well.
Maple Street.
Do not have, yeah, Maple Street, thank you, Bill. I do not have the authority to direct them to do it. I wish I did, but we did share that concern, and they recognized it and said they would look into it. They also received phone calls from, lack of a better phrase, I don't want to call it the command center, 911. I don't know what 911's called besides 911, but 911. So they've been getting phone calls on that too. With all construction projects, the first day is the biggest headache day, and that's where you learn, what some of the shortcomings might have been in the planning, phase, and they're addressing those. But thanks for bringing that up. And if you guys see other things, reach out to me and let me know. Doug Swearis is the contact for below grade stuff, because there's some pipe work that's happening. And then Doug Codsman, who's off today and tomorrow, is the above grade contact or the liaison. But I'll forward that stuff on to staff, so feel free to reach out to me as you see things that are kind of goofy. And we'll see if we can't make them ungoofy.
Nothing today.
I don't know whether I should contact Joel about this, but sidewalk signage, the,
A-frame.
yeah,
A-frames, you mean downtown or in the neighborhoods?
downtown.
Okay.
And then, do we have any kind of ordinance or anything that controls that, how big? Because I see a flag down there that's 22 feet tall.
Well, you have
It's not that tall.
very good timing. Later on in the regular meeting, when you hear an update from the DDA, they are discussing sidewalk ordinance for the downtown
Okay.
to regulate the placement of signage to ensure we don't
Have
block
20-foot signs.
pedestrians. And we mentioned a very large flag on Locust
What I'm
that's
talking
next to a tree. You just walk through the flag. And so we're going to talk to that property owner specifically, but the DDA is working on some language for sign placement of their downtown area.
Okay, like I said, I didn't know if it's something I should contact you about or bring up in here or not.
As always, if you have questions, sometimes I don't respond timely to some emails, as Bill knows, but, you can always chirp on me and hit me up and keep calling me or texting me or emailing me. You have my cell phone.
Is that it, Bill?
Thank you, Joel.
You're welcome.
Is that it? Is that it from you?
That's it. Why, you want something else?
Well, I'm just making
Come
sure.
up with something.
I sometimes rush past people. Delora?
I was just gonna ask what is going on down on the riverfront in that grassy area?
Sure. So this winter was what I'm going to call a rough winter on that grass area. I don't know if you've noticed it during February when we had some hot temperatures, but that grass is not in the condition that the city of Allegan should have our parks, especially on the riverfront. So we worked with Westling Landscape. I might butcher their company's name, but it's Westling Landscaping Services. They were plowing our downtown streets for us. And we reached out to them to address that, so they just dumped a bunch of black dirt and did some scraping of the grass to get new grass seed to grow. And it was actually, Westling reached out to the city. We knew we had an issue, we were trying to put plans together, and then, they just reached out to us at the same time and said, hey, this is what we probably should do down here. And so we were able to, Doug Codsman brought the plan to me, and I said, let's go for it, Doug, because before we know it, summer will be here, and that riverfront will be hopping again.
Thank you. That's it for me.
Teresa?
I don't have anything tonight. Thank you.
And I don't have anything either, so we will move on to item number 4, the discussion of fiscal year 2025 fee schedule.
Thank you, Mayor. In your packet was a memo regarding the fiscal year 25 fee schedule, which will start on July 1st. It's part of the annual budget. Council adopts the fee schedule. Previously, you mentioned, or council mentioned, that they'd like to have some time to talk about the fees. I interpreted that as you wanted to talk about water and sewer fees. So you'll see that we're going to talk mostly about water and sewer fees. Doug Swears is here. We have a few slides we'd like to go through to discuss, the water and sewer fees. The whole fee schedule is in your packet. We're not going to touch on all the fees on the slides. So if there's specific ones you'd like to dive into, we can dive into. When we talk about the water and sewer fees, we're talking mostly about rate increases for the commodity and the ready to serve. However, if council wants to go into a conversation about all the fees, such as delinquency fees, shut-off fees, et cetera, we can also have those conversations. But with that, I'd like to invite Doug up to the podium, and we'll go through these slides and kind of show you where the budget's kind of going with those rate increases. And I'll also just quickly remind council that we have a rate-making software program that we utilize for determining, what the rate should be based on all of our expenses to run the water and sewer, operations for the city.
So the first slide is dealing with the sewer fund. Proposed is a 1.5% increase for commodity and ready-to-serve fees. There you can see what the fees would be increased to in yellow.
Any questions on that?
This one gets a little busy, but you want to look at the light yellow line. That is the anticipated fund balance for the next 10 years. And this is with a 1.5% increase for each year subsequent to 2025 fiscal year.
Real quick, what I want to point out to council is, so year one, we're at 3.4 million in our fund balance for our sewer fund, then 3.6, then 3.5, 3.8, then we go over 4, 5, and then in year 7 up there is when we have a pretty big capital project planned, and we're going to pay with cash for that. So we're going to, building up the cash reserves to pay with cash for when we have to do the big investments. Any questions on this? And then I'll also point out, when I talk about the rate-making software, this is one of 79 tabs in an Excel sheet or something like that that you're seeing on this screen. And if you ever want to sit down and get a tutorial on this, Doug is more than willing to meet with you in our conference room here and plug in his computer and project it on the TV in our conference room.
Did this come from that study we paid for?
No, this comes from a class I took with Michigan Rural Water. The study I believe you're referring to through the DWAM grant is not complete yet. I have sent information to Baker Tilly, but they have not gone through either of the water or sewer funds yet.
So how are we talking about rates when we don't have the study yet back?
We do this every year. They're doing it as part of the DWAM grant, so it's kind of being done in conjunction. We're doing this. Their schedule does not put them done in time for budget approval on May 15th.
Huh. Well, that seems weird to not have done that study in.
That study is not done specifically for budgeting. It's done for asset management as part of the DWAM grant.
Wouldn't asset management be part of?
It is, but it doesn't look, it's not being done for this specific year's budget. It's being done as a projection of what's needed, a recommendation what's needed, and what will be needed in the future years. So it was not portrayed or being done for this budget year specifically.
So I would offer with those state grants, the DWAM grants, we're required to have a third-party analyst to look at our rates, for the sewer fund. That was for the sewer fund, correct? The DRAM?
Yes, for part of the original grant funding for building the sewer plant.
And then council authorized to spend more for the other fund, the water fund, to have them look at that whole thing. This is a process the city staff has been doing for the past 5 years now.
Yes.
I have full faith in our staff to, implement this, that, before that, the city wasn't doing this kind of, in-depth, dive. It's always good to have a third party, but, they're moving at their speed as it, relates to that grant funding. We need to continue to look at our process. And again, if you want to come in and meet with Doug and see that, rate-making software and all the data points that he puts into this. Teresa's shaking her head, yes?
And that's what I was gonna add to that is, I think, without seeing the whole picture, we're just seeing a little bitty piece of it right here. In our study group, we had, Doug tried to show us every tab, then it all comes together. But he's just showing the bottom line figures. My question on this was, is this based on a 1.5%
Yes.
increase then?
Yep,
Okay,
1.5% for this year, and the 1.5 you see in kind of the orangish peach color,
looking to see
that
it
is
right over
the
the top.
increases for
oh,
subsequent
there it
years.
is, okay, I was looking right over the top of it, okay, great, thanks.
And that's the 1.5% that we agreed on.
Yes.
Yeah, previous council passed a resolution back in 2018, I think it was.
Was that long ago?
Yeah, I think Delora might have just got appointed or wasn't appointed yet. I can't remember. It's been a while,
Yeah, I wasn't on quite yet when they did that, but
yeah.
Is that starting cash available accurate? I thought we were ending much lower than that.
For, these numbers were taken off of the current budget sheets that I have. So the bright yellow would be the fund balance from the end of this year going into 2025. And then the 3,423,000, the first one in the light yellow would be the ending fund balance for fiscal year 25.
Yeah, but that 2.8 million above it,
Yes.
that's just way higher than anything I've seen
That,
out of the budgets.
that is the number that I have out of the budget.
Which budget?
The one that we're working with that we,
This is the sewer fund general, this isn't the general fund, right?
No, this
Judd?
is not general fund, this is
the
Yeah,
sewer
yeah, the
fund.
sewer fund. Out of the, would be FY '24 budget?
yes.
Because that was supposed to end at like less than 100,000.
That is not what my budget papers that I have show.
That's not what I have either.
Huh. All right, I'll have to go back and look at the budget then, because I was really alarmed by the number, but that's a much healthier balance than.
The 100,000 would make me very, very nervous.
Well, that's exactly the,
The water
Output
fund
we
is,
got.
is not near as in good of shape, so I'm not sure if you're thinking of the water fund.
oh no, both of them I know were really pretty rough.
So this next slide shows what, water bills would be based on the gallons used. So the column that is mostly yellow is, gallons used. And then you want to look at where your new bill would be and the change in bill. So when we looked at the average user a few years ago, average user in Allegan is right around the 33 to 3,500 gallons per month range. So for the sewer, they would see the 60 to 70 cents a month change in bill. Moving forward to the water fund. Again, this we will show you two different scenarios, projections. The first one being a 1.5% increase, and the second one being a 3% increase. So this is a 1.5%. We'll go through the 1.5% first. This is 10-year projection on the water fund at a 1.5%. You can see what the ending fund balance is for each of those years. One difference between the water fund and the sewer fund, in year 7, instead of cash funding for capital improvement projects, major street projects, capital improvement projects, this is bonding for those and borrowing money as opposed to using cash on hand.
I'm sorry, Doug, that's the capital improvement plan you said is
Yeah,
bonded?
so I'm just pointing out that, I believe it was year 7, the sewer fund took a drop from about 4 million to 2 million and some thousands. That was because the sewer fund is cash funding the capital, whereas the water fund does not build fund balance as quickly or as high. And for those same projects, because there'd be water as well as sewer, those would be bonded for, and you would just see a loan payment coming out instead of a couple million coming out of fund balance. You would see loan or bond payments being taken out instead. And that is approximately the year that most of the bond payments for the water plant and other water capital projects from the past, that those bond payments are coming off. We would just basically renew them, get new bonds, and continue on.
Doug, just real quick, on the spreadsheets, you put in all the capital improvement project, like expenses, et cetera. So when we have these fund balances up here, that is taking into account those expenditures.
That is taking in, and especially, I mean, we're going out 7 years to project. These capital projects were identified back in 2017, 2018. You know, I did not put in numbers from then. I have kind of, knowing what our bids have been the last few years, tried to give a realistic number at this point. You know, in 2 years from now, you may say, Doug, what were you thinking? You know, that's twice as much or half as much as we really need. But it's a better projection than it was in 2017 for the project.
And this includes, help my words, reserved and
So, thank you for bringing
both,
that up.
both monies.
Thank you for bringing that up,
Think of what I'm
Councilmember
thinking.
Galloway. So, in order to, I'll say, achieve the fund balances you see, both the water plant and the distribution system, they're two different budgets, all under the water fund. I have asset management software where we track all the equipment at the water plant, try to track, you know, all the pipes in the ground, and project when they will fail, when they will need repairs, and put dollar amounts to that. That then kicks out what we should be putting away for asset repair and replacement each year. In order to obtain the fund balance, as you see in this slide, with a 1.5% increase, the asset repair lines in both budgets have about been cut in half. The water plant should be 175 this year. It was dropped down to 100,000. The distribution should be 100,000. It was dropped down to 50.
So Doug, in the report, it is just saying that the water funds, you think should have a larger increase to ensure that we have adequate funding
That will
moving forward?
Be in a couple slides.
Okay. Sorry to jump ahead.
Nope, that is fine. So this is what water bills would be with the 1.5% increase. Again, looking at the 3,000 to 4,000 gallons used for the normal resident, bills would increase between 50 and 58 cents a month. On the water side, so plus the sewer side, I believe that puts you around $1.25 per month. So moving forward, I also did projections at a 3% increase. So this would just be the rates, commodity charges, and ready-to-serve fees with a 3% increase on the water side. This is the 10-year projections. It helps the fund balances. What I did not change on this, I didn't want to change too many things to get it, to change the slides around. This keeps the asset management and repair at the same levels as the 1.5%, but you can see as the fund balance grows, we could have more of that into the asset repair and replacement.
Rather than bonding it? Is that what you mean?
Correct.
Yeah.
I guess I would not say we could comfortably pay cash for all of the capital expenses out in 2027, but we would have some cash on hand, more than with 1.5. And also, if you notice in the orangey peach ones, this is 3% going forward also. It's not just a 3% this year, it is 3% going forward, projected in the next 10 years. And then what the average bills would be based on the gallons used. This would add $1 to $1.15 for the customer. So if you're at 4,000 gallons and we did a 3% increase on water and the 1.5 on sewer, you would be right around the $1.90, I believe it is, $1.90 to $2 for a 4,000 gallon water bill that it would increase.
And homes are the 3 to 4 inch,
3 to 4,000 gallons, yes.
okay,
That's 3/4 inch.
okay.
Yes, back when we had the WES
Thank you.
committee, that was one of my projects. I went through all the water bills and figured out what the average household used. And I believe the number at that point was 3,300 gallons.
Okay.
So, some direction from council regarding the rate increases. And I understand there's a lot more to fee schedules than the rate increases. Is, 1.5 for sewer is what staff's recommending. As the memo said, the water we feel is a little, tighter at 1.5. And, to make our water fund a little more stronger, we'd recommend a higher fund. 3% is, something that we would be recommending, but we really need to have that conversation with, council. That's why I believe you wanted to put this on the agenda prior to seeing the budget fully, taken care of.
Could you go back for the fund balances? I just,
Yes.
with the 1.5 or the 3, I don't know if there's a way to split screen or anything. Oh, okay.
Page 52, 286 has those fund totals, by the way.
All right, thank you.
I'm looking at 96,000 in wastewater is the 2024 proposed budget under proprietary funds.
Oh, not in the packet, Dave, I'm sorry.
In the budget,
Okay.
yeah, FY '24 budget, page 52.
I don't have that budget pulled up, but what you're looking at is the unrestricted fund balance, which is putting away the money from restricted for plants and the distribution that we put away with the asset repair and replacement money. It goes into,
It's tracked separately.
it's just tracked separately. It's not technically in another bank account. It's just tracked separately and split out so that it can be used for capital purposes. So that's not the fund balance, that's the unrestricted fund balance.
And the restricted fund balance, we have restricted fund balance for water tower painting. So there's
Identified
yeah,
items.
but there's specific things that we have that fund balance already.
Like that money's
Planned out for.
allocated
Yeah.
somewhere.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's the word I was trying to think of.
Would it, if the money's already allocated somewhere, then it's kind of spent already, right?
It's to be spent down the road.
Yeah,
So it's money we put away each quarter, each
Well,
month, whatever, each year.
budget, we have projections of when water towers will be painted. So water tower costs right around 200,000 to paint. So we're not gonna just one budget year, say we need $200,000, so we project when we have to paint them, how much we have to put away each year. And that all goes into that reserve fund to eventually paint a water tower or, rebuild, pull wells, well pumps and rebuild them.
So if something unexpected comes up, we'll have 96,000 in the wastewater fund to pay for the unexpected thing?
Yeah, I mean, unexpected can come out of fund balance also, out of the sewer fund balance, where there is more than the 96,000. That can be used for unexpected items also.
I guess on the water side, I'm a little concerned because 2 years ago, we were told, don't increase the rates at all because there was so much money in that water fund. And now we're being told we have to increase it more.
I believe it was projected that on the sewer fund that we did not need to. Water fund has always had funding issues.
I think that was
We'll
last
look up-
year. You guys did not recommend an increase to sewer, but
Yes.
council had directed that we do that just for
FY
consistency and not to be.
FY '22, I can look it up. But, go ahead.
We didn't increase one year. I believe,
Yeah,
Yes.
Right.
Yeah.
That was a
Yeah,
couple
kinda
years
burned
too.
us.
No
One
increase,
one year we
yes.
did not increase at all.
it was
Right.
2 years ago, it was on the water fund. There's so much money in the water fund, we can't possibly increase it. And now we're struggling on it.
Economy has changed. I mean, our expenses for both, lab expenses, chemicals, capital projects, equipment, they're continuing to go up.
And it's kind of the same thing with the money we've put into a reserved fund. I mean, we can project that the painting of a tower is gonna be X amount of dollars in 5 years. Is that how long we paint them, or 7?
Outside is every 15
Oh,
years.
is that long? Okay. So we can project that and reserve so much money for that, but we don't know
Right.
what the price is gonna be, so we may or may not have enough money in that reserve fund. It's kind of the same situation. You know, we can say we don't need it this year, but we have no clue what the economy's gonna do.
But didn't we spend a lot out of water and sewer on the streetscape? I mean, like millions, right?
With the infrastructure?
Yeah.
But that was
I believe-
bonded, so, I mean, it's millions, but it's a payment on millions each year.
So it didn't just come out of our reserves?
And we had the $3 million Booker funds as well,
Right,
which is,
For lead line replacement.
lead
Yeah.
line, yes.
which was a lot of the downtown stuff we did.
No,
And
no
not a
Booker
lot?
funds were used downtown.
We didn't use any downtown?
No.
Okay.
So going back to the 1.5 or 3%, because I think that's where we started. The thought of adding $1.90 to a water and sewer bill doesn't seem like much. The thing that concerns me is that you're projecting out that this is gonna be a yearly thing, and so at the end of 10 years, we've raised our rates by 30%, and that gives me some pause.
It's compounding technically too, so like 3% on what was raised the year before.
Right.
Yeah.
I mean, I like looking at those fund balances. I go, that's the 1.5, but, that just seems like, we already have pretty high water, from what everybody tells me, we have pretty high water rates, and so to raise it another 30% over 10 years, I don't know, what are our thoughts on that?
I think it's a balancing act, like, it really is.
Right, so.
whether you're gonna bond out for capital improvement projects, I mean, these systems need to be maintained.
Yeah.
And we need to bring in the revenue to maintain that.
So one thing I was told in the rate-making class is O&M, you know, it is what it is. We have to budget for that. Capital and what's put away for capital is pretty much council's decision based on when they want to do the capital and how they want to pay for the capital, either cash on hand or bonding. If you're bonding, then we figure just O&M expenses and, you know, when it comes time for the project, you know, then there might be an increase to cover bond costs. But then that bond cost is out for, you know, X number of years.
It's kind of the same situation we're in with streets right now. We haven't put any money away towards streets, to repair streets.
That's a good way of thinking of it.
And so here we are needing to put $300,000 away a year to reach, you know, to improve our
80%
streets.
or,
Yeah, yeah. So
yeah, that's
the
a
only
good point.
problem with that is we don't have anything to increase other than go for a millage or taxes, you know.
When we just haven't been
Kind of
putting that money
same
aside,
concept.
right? Like
Right.
we've been spending it in other places, just like this, we've been spending it on capital improvement projects, and just like they said, that was,
That need to be done. I mean, it's not like it's just, you know, if a pipe breaks or pipes need to be replaced. I don't think that our staff are just having capital improvement projects because, you know, and if we don't continue to maintain these, then we are gonna run into a situation where there's a major failure. You know, I mean, we had a major pipe failure in the water facility that we weren't expecting, you know, that needed to be replaced. That was a large chunk. The issue is the revenue versus expenses. I mean, we don't bring in enough to cover all of the services that we provide, streets, water, et cetera. So that's what we have to look at, like,
And I guess to your point, Dave, raising it to 3% allows us to put the money aside that we're gonna need to do the capital improvements that we have to do over the next 10 or 15 years.
but we already did big capital improvement. We're paying on bonds for the next 10 years for capital improvement we did, right?
well, what's your suggestion on how to get revenue to pay for these things then? I mean, what'd you suggest?
I think the rate study is a really good step, an important one, and it seems like something hasn't been going right so far to end up in this situation, right? Like, is it okay that we're in this situation? Is it sort of like inevitable, it was gonna happen no matter what?
Which situation?
Where we've gotta raise rates more?
I think it speaks to the economy, as Doug mentioned.
If-
I mean,
if
we're
I
seeing that in any bid that we're getting back.
Yeah, all
I
materials
mean,
are higher.
everything has gone up exponentially.
If I had to take a guess, the rate study will show much more significant rate increases than what we are saying we can deal with.
That's what I'm anticipating.
Because they will want to see asset repair funds at certain levels, fund balances at certain levels, and, you know, coverage of bond payments at certain levels. And we are covering O&M and bond payments, which is O&M, but we're not funding to what the, you know, rate study that we've paid for will recommend that they be funded at.
So you think that they're gonna say we're being conservative even at 3%?
Yes. Just my gut feeling.
Yeah.
So I'm gonna throw something else out here at council. So we've been discussing the turn-off charges and all of that. That all plays into this. If we cut all that out, or cut some of it down, or don't charge people for that, then us people that are getting the water rate charge that pay it are gonna be paying for those people that don't pay their bills.
Well, yeah,
So it all is a big circle of what we're taking out of this pot, the unreserved fund.
I think the main point of the discussion, at least from my perspective, was not necessarily charges, it was whether we shut people's water off, and those still theoretically get paid because they go on their tax they do a tax assessment.
Yeah, and the city waits for that.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
But, so,
Yep.
but if we were talking about actually getting rid of those charges, then yeah, that would negatively affect those fund balances.
Yes.
And I guess that's the struggle that I have is, there's a comment that we're pushing all of these things off to take care of, and it almost sounds like it's like a deliberate, or that we're using the funds where they shouldn't be used. And like, I'm gonna repeat, like, our revenue versus expenses does not leave much to take care of things. It just doesn't. So we need to come up with some ideas on how to increase revenue and look at expenses to decrease those where possible. But, I mean, our streets are the way they are because we didn't have the money to put them aside. It's not like we're choosing not to fix them to put it somewhere else, in my mind. And this has been a decades of a situation. It's not this council that's made these choices. It's going back and back and back because they didn't have the funds
Right.
to
And
put
it's
them anywhere.
And it's a nationwide.
And it is a huge
Yeah.
problem across the country.
But we did make choices to spend money in places and not in other places, right? Like, that's what we do here.
I mean, I don't feel like I'm approving things that aren't necessary to be done. I feel like the downtown streetscape needed to be done, for multiple reasons. I mean, I think that the roundabout is, this was the timing. It's been a discussion for 20-some years. It's not just hey, let's do this right away. It's been years. We've approved this years ago.
Sure. But, it was a choice, right?
Yeah, absolutely. But again, I don't feel like I've made a choice for expenditures that wasn't something that needed to be done. Doug wanted a pole barn, and we said no.
Well, I thought that was a great idea, to do the pole barn. That protected equipment, like, we'd made investments there. Council decided not to do that. I get that, but just like with street maintenance, we made choices to spend $500,000 somewhere else. We could have spent it there, and now we're gonna keep making that choice next year.
We have two big projects for streets coming up, Ely Street, the roundabout in Hubbard. We're fixing
There-
some streets, but
There are other capital expenses that we're gonna choose to put money to instead of that.
Well, you have to prioritize things, and there are things that are important there's a lot of things that are important. We have to prioritize what the top priorities are, and there are going to be some important things that aren't gonna get done because we don't have unlimited amounts of money. So whatever we do, there's gonna be something that doesn't get done. And we just gotta try to make sure that the things that we choose to do are the most important, and we have to prioritize those things. But, yeah, so there's always gonna be something that we could point to and go, well, you did this, so you couldn't do that. Well, yeah, or if we did that, then we couldn't have done the other thing. So we just have to try to use our best judgment and be as wise as we can. But there's always gonna be something we aren't gonna be able to get done, right?
I look at what makes the most community impact, honestly. But going back to the rates, yeah.
Yeah.
I think you're right, Doug, that we are being, as Roger said, conservative with that number. And we've been hesitant to raise rates over that 1.5 resolution from 2017 or 18. And so that's one reason we're here too.
And one thing, just to remind council, you're approving the rates for 1 year. We show the projection, because that's what we need to do for planning.
Right.
You're not agreeing to the increases forward. And prior to 2017, rates were adjusted sometimes in the middle of a fiscal year. And sometimes they weren't adjusted for 2 years. So what we did with this software, that Doug was able to, manipulate and, learn and master, is try to create some sense of regularness and, adjusting our rates and incorporating it into the budget moving forward. So tonight, you're not approving anything tonight, but when you adopt a budget and the fee schedule, that's part of the budget. It is just for, this upcoming fiscal year. You can make changes as you feel fit or see fit.
Can I get this presentation, because this wasn't part of our packet?
So we can email this to you. I would heavily encourage council members, if you want to dive deep, you should really schedule a meeting with Doug. He can meet up to 3 council members at a time. Those of you that have gone through this with Doug, I would offer to put words in their mouth. It's eye-opening. I mean, this is not just throwing spaghetti at the wall and seeing what sticks. There is logic, there is data, and it spits out, the number where you're at, and you get to play with stuff. You get to say, what if we only invest, $5,000 in, pipes? How does that affect the fund balance? So all the tabs talk to each other. So yeah, I encourage you, if you really want to, and for my staff, I'm thinking about their well-being. The best way to discuss this is probably more one-on-one in a relaxed setting for them. And that way, they're not just standing at a podium, having rapid-fire questions come at them. That's not what they're paid for.
Doug doesn't mind.
But how do we have that council discussion on prioritizing? I mean, I'm not gonna go into Doug's office and talk about priorities, right?
That's something we're talking about on April 1st.
And I'm not talking about priorities. I'm talking if you want to dive into these numbers and see how we get to those numbers, that's a discussion that Doug can walk you through.
I can run many different scenarios, taking capital out, putting more capital in, changing budget numbers. I can run many different scenarios. This page right here, you could say, well, what if year 5, we wanted to do a 5% increase and then nothing for another year? And I can change all of those.
What does council think about that 630,000 that goes from water and sewer into the general fund? That one was set to increase 2.5%. I think a few years ago it increased more than that. But do we need to, examine that piece to get that cost right?
Is that like administrative costs?
100,000, yeah.
Yeah,
what
it's
is
the
that?
municipal service charge. That was the answer I got.
And that's
What is that
for
in,
staff
what is that in English?
time.
So,
Part of Danielle's salary would be from the
Yes.
water and sewer department.
so that's all the costs. That's building rent, electricity, utilities. We put together the spreadsheet in 2019. I believe it was 2019 when we put together that spreadsheet. Some cities just do a straight 20% of the revenue. I believe that's how St. Joe's operates. 20% of the utilities revenue just goes right into the general fund to cover all those costs. We went a different route where we estimated how much time staff spends on, water, sewer, et cetera. We can share that information with this council again.
So that transfer includes from water and sewer to the general fund to
To the
pay
general
for
fund.
utilities, for,
Staff time, rent of the building here, paying the bond off the building here. I would just let council know, if you do cut it, then that's an increase on our general fund. And, reduces, money that can be spent on the general fund for, the theater, the Griswold, streets, because we do transfer money from the general fund to the streets fund. So it's kind of a air in a balloon. You squeeze one in, it's gonna, pop out on the other end.
And we can't increase taxes much because we're restricted by state law, but we can increase this a lot, which is where it gets a little kind of like, we should be careful with these increases when we're transferring money to general fund or we're supplementing big construction projects with water and sewer funds.
Which is why we do a 2.5% increase. That's not outrageous, and it's less than,
Yeah, inflation this year is over 5%.
and
But you
and all
see,
of that.
if we do a 1.5% increase on our water and sewer rates, but a 2.5% increase on what we send over to the general fund, you can see how that could not work out over time, council.
So is the 2.5% just the standard increase each year?
Yes.
Yeah, so inflation's 3.4% now.
So we're not keeping up with
We're not
that.
keeping up with inflation.
Well,
And
I would probably
utilities
suggest,
probably
since
went
the last time that was done was 2019, just like in the water rates, we probably should go back through and make sure our estimates
Yeah.
are correct and everything is
So,
correct. 'Cause
so,
that's
so,
how-
yeah, Yeah, so that formula, we did that work in 2019, as we mentioned. We review it annually in-house, and we can share that with you on where we are right now in-house.
We're not increasing it enough either, so it's gonna increase the cost to these other funds if we go that route too, so.
You mean, Tracy, it should have been increased more than what we're putting into the general fund anyway?
Yeah, I mean, all of the expenses that we have, just, I mean, employee increases alone. I mean, yeah, they've been about 2.5%, which is why we've justified the 2.5% on that. But we also didn't increase them as much in a couple of the years because we're trying to keep those expenses low. When we look at how to keep things consistent but realistic, I mean, if we have to reduce the asset or repairs and whatever, we reduce that, or we reduce this, and, you know, those are the things that we can easily reduce, but then it does affect the general fund.
I wouldn't mind seeing the breakdown of it.
I already emailed it to all council.
2.5% increase on 600K, I think that gets us to like 15 grand a year, which is about what we were making off of the water shut-off fees. So if the water shut-off fees are a big deal, that, you know, if we're really worried about all that money and where it's going.
So just for clarification too, the 688,000 is all of the funds altogether. Sewer fund is 338,000 projected for this upcoming budget, and water is 265,000.
All right. You have something, Delora, I see your hand moving toward the button. No?
No, I was just saying, what do we think about the 1.5 or 3%? Like, just getting back to that, so as we're moving forward with the budget, staff knows what to budget for.
Right?
I really would like to see it just go the 1.5, just to be consistent and see what's gonna happen with this economy after the election, but that's just me.
Anyone else comment on that?
As much as I would like to maintain that 1.5, I mean, we've had discussions as a council that we want to reduce our bonding. And in order to do that, we need to bring in more revenue, because those bond payments will just also compound. I don't know, is there a way to?
I will just say the bonds we've gotten the last couple of years, the interest is not as low as the ones we have on the treatment plans from 10 years ago, 12 years ago. So interest rates, even through the state, the low interest loans have gone up slightly, but the open market bonds have gone up from 2% to 3.5%, 4%. So even planning to bond, you have to plan more because the interest rates are up.
So I would say 3% from my perspective, just to.
Yeah. Well, just in that looking, I mean, the realization that we haven't put, as city council going back however long, and across our country, have not put enough money into infrastructure. It seems to me that going with 3% is probably where we should be, because if these last few years have been any indication on how materials and costs are going up, we have to prepare, because our city needs to have water and sewer capabilities. So I would support, at this point, I would say I would be in favor of 3%. else want to weigh in on that at all?
I want the presentation.
wanna
I
see it.
didn't get that beforehand, so throwing it up in front of me like this, I'm not gonna make a decision at this point. Are we gonna go over any of the other fee schedule here? Because the stuff that's in the packet, I have a question on.
Yeah, if you guys are done talking about this, feel free to ask questions about other things that was in the packet on the fee schedule.
I see the highlight for enforcement civil penalties, animal violations. Why is it highlighted and none of the figures are different?
That's highlighted because we need to jump back into the ordinance that was recently adopted this past year and make sure that whatever's in the ordinance is represented here.
Because I'm pretty sure we increased them.
I think so. And that's why it's highlighted, to answer your question.
I was trying to find that ordinance
Yeah.
as well, so.
Any other questions about the fees you may have seen?
This is a discussion between council, but we'll let you come up if you want to. Well, we need the microphone.
As you all know, this is my first meeting, so I am a little ignorant to your process. But from what you want my name?
Please.
Christine Cook,
And what's your address, Christine, just for the record?
113 Cora Street.
Thank you.
From what I just understood you all speaking about with the 3% increase, would be strictly for this year, correct?
Yes.
Because he was talking about a 10-year schedule here. If you take 3% for this year, I understand that. So the 3% that would be added onto my bill. Now, if you do go with a 10-year schedule, that would be a 3% increase for each year. It's not a straight 30%. Because if you do a 30%, my bill would be $60 in 10 years. It's 46 at the time. So do you understand what I'm saying and what I'm questioning? It's not 3% from now. It's not an actual 30% in 10 years.
Right.
So I'd rather have you look at that, because it's going to be a lot more.
Thank you. And just as a reminder, we're all city residents, so this affects all of us.
No, I understand
Yeah.
that, but I'm just saying that
Right, it's compounded.
it's not just a 30% increase of what it is today.
Yeah. Yes, thank you very much. Yeah.
Council, any other questions on the fee schedule that was in your packet?
So I don't know when we have this discussion, if we wait till April 1st, but I know there has been a lot of going back and forth with fees and the waiving of fees with the Griswold and with different city-owned parks, and we have to come to some sort of, and I think we have this discussion at this time every year, but we have to come to some sort of agreement on what we do. I mean, I'm always, I'm from the nonprofit world and always want to help nonprofits, but, we rented the Griswold this year and we just paid the fee because that's the fee. And when is the right time for us to decide or have the discussion of when, of what we're going to do and what policy we're gonna put in place so that when, you get these great organizations that are coming up that are doing great work saying, we want the Griswold for free, and we all go, man, you're doing really great work, okay, but then we kind of, we're taking steps backwards of trying to let the Griswold fund itself, and so, when do you guys want to have that discussion?
I think you should have two fees.
Yeah?
A fee for your do-good things,
Nonprofits?
a nominal fee for them, for the nonprofits, Okay.
I
And
was
then
gonna
they-
say that as well, Bill.
Just a reminder, nonprofit does not mean they're doing good necessarily. You're just a nonprofit. The city is a nonprofit. I really don't like attaching it to, you gotta be a 501c3 because quite a few of the people that have come in here that we've reduced fees for
No.
are not.
Correct, my business is nonprofit for 20 years, so.
Yeah. That's why I usually don't like going with policies that way, because some of these, I think the.
But you
people
know
that-
what I mean, when I'm discussing, and I think that there should be a nominal fee for them, not a freebie, but a
Maybe just-
nominal fee.
A reduced fee, just say it's half
Correct,
cost or
and
something.
then a fee
and that's our
for
policy.
other ones.
And
That's
I'm
my,
open to that.
that's my feeling.
So if we don't want to do it as a 501c3, then what's the delineator? To go, yes, you're a do-gooder organization, but you're not.
One, if you're doing a show where you're collecting ticket fees, I really don't like doing reduced fees, even if it is for a fundraiser sometimes. Usually it's always been something that's open to the public and free to the public was one of the reasons that I would usually reduce a fee compared to not. You know, technically the RNC or the DNC or whoever is a nonprofit as well, they could come in and get a reduced fee. So it's very hard on these policies, like she sent policies from like Seattle and others, when I look at them, go, this is an administrative nightmare. I don't mind getting the request now and then to say I'd like a reduced fee. We look at it and we say yes or no.
So you said open to the public and free, and those are
But
quantifiable.
those are quantifiable. That's usually kind of my standards, open, public, free. It's a community event. Because that is something that, like the Griswold is a community theater. It's a city theater. It's a city asset. It's meant for the community's enjoyment. And doing like shows that you're selling tickets for, of course, I'm probably gonna go, no, you could reduce it maybe to the half or whatever, like Bill's saying. But we could just say it never gets reduced to nothing. That's the policy. We just never go to nothing. It's always gonna be half of the value. That's our policy and that's our cutoff.
Is that across the board though, with parks and everything too? Or just the
For the
Griswold?
park rentals? Yeah, because I said that when the Catholics wanted to go down there, I'm like, technically, you could just send somebody to the gazebo and sit in it, and you don't have to
Right, but
reserve
like,
it.
with Good Times at the Gazebo, I mean, we have historically,
Yeah,
Same thing there. You can just go have a concert, and can't really tell you can't do it.
but that is open and free to the public, though.
Yeah.
I mean, so that would fall under that.
It's
but
really,
there's zero fee for that. I mean, we don't charge anything.
yeah.
Right, true.
But we also don't administer anything other than just saying you can do it, have a good time. Other than saying you got exclusive use of it is pretty much what we're saying for those. For the parks.
Is it worth finding out how much we waived in fees? Like the last 2-3 years?
Just to see what number we're,
Yeah, if we're
Trying
talking
to
about
recoup.
$5,000.
Honestly, I think it's probably pretty
right,
minimal
minimal.
when you think about it.
It seems like the bigger issue is like community investment in the Griswold, right? Like we were just talking about how we can't reduce the amount moving to general fund from water and sewer because then we couldn't fund Griswold and Region. It's like, well, that's water versus the theater. The theater, it seems like we could rally the community around doing something like that. And I would love to see a board for the Griswold Auditorium that can advise on fees and things like that. And garner volunteers and get donors and sponsors.
Yeah, I mean, I totally agree with that, and we've had that discussion, and I would love to see that happen, but that's not gonna happen before we set this budget, so that seems like every year we all sort of struggle with who do we waive fees for, do we waive fees? And I feel like we always say, well, we need to come up with something, so when are we coming up with something? And we don't have time in the study session, but maybe we go to, I don't know if we want to say we're gonna talk about that on the first, I don't know if we're gonna have time with everything else that we have, but, I would like to have that conversation, maybe on the next study session, if we take some time to talk through it. And I'm not saying what we should do one way or another, I just want us to all agree, this is how we're gonna go forward, and if we say, well, what we've been doing works, then that's what we'll do. But I want us to decide that.
And I don't think it's hurting the Griswold's bottom line. What's hurting the Griswold's bottom line is the lack of overall rentals percentage-wise, how much it could actually be utilized. If we were to utilize it to its full extent, it would probably be at least getting towards being break even to black. But since we don't rent it every weekend, we don't have it rented at 80% capacity, or, you know, that's really what's hurting it the most.
Yeah, it's empty most of the time.
I'm just gonna say this, and I've said it before. We never, since I've been on council, have spent enough time going over the fee schedule. It's like at the end of the budget session, and we breeze over it, and by that time, everybody's burnt out and done with it. So I would love to have just a study session where we can go over the fees and and I don't care if it's line by line, or at least talk by department and look at each one.
We got 15 minutes, Teresa. We're still talking about fees, so.
So maybe our next study session,
Then we need to take off roundtable discussion. Because tonight was supposed to be that, just fees, and we spent a lot of time on the roundtable discussion. And so that would be my recommendation.
our time.
Or a special meeting.
Or a special meeting.
We can get it done in a study session. If that's what we set our minds to. Does that sound all right?
So are we not allowed to talk about fees anymore tonight?
Well, I think we're just gonna have to move forward, because we've got more things left on our agenda, and we've only got 14 minutes left before a regular session starts. Is that
So no more fee talk.
well, we're running, no more fee talk. We're just running out of time.
Okay.
Yeah. So, we're gonna move on to item number 5, discussion of fiscal year 2025 approved vendor list.
So very quickly, in your packet was a staff report that identified why we have approved vendor list. As I mentioned in the packet, you can find that in our code of ordinances. And then I attached the list of vendors that are listed as approved vendors. Again, the highlighted ones are ones that we are looking into to make sure that they meet our, that they're still, we use them enough that they should be on our approved vendor list. So, do you have any questions over that list, or any questions over, section, it's 232-326 now, but in the report, it was 2-17.
Only thing I see is like you have Cisco for cleaning supplies, but you don't have like Gordon to be able to do any comparison shopping. Usually I'd like, if I'm gonna have an approved vendor for one particular item, I wouldn't mind having two.
Okay.
So you can actually
Yep.
price shop.
Yeah, I believe Cisco is who we use for our Regent Theater purchases mostly.
Yeah, cleaning supplies at the Regent Theater, City Hall, which is also City Hall restrooms, Griswold Auditorium.
And like those repeat purchases generally, I'd like, if you have two different suppliers that you can go to, I wouldn't mind having both on the approved vendor, so we don't
Okay.
have to have us, come in to approve a special buy of something because that supplier didn't have it.
Amazon's on there. They have everything.
And just real quick, when you say Gordon, do you mean Gordon Food Services?
Yeah, they just
Not
like
the
Cisco.
funeral home.
I just want to make it, I thought so, I just want to clarify.
So they probably have everything else also that the theater generally uses
They do.
for it, so.
Any other questions on the vendor list? All right, item number 6, downtown infrastructure and streetscape report.
All right, just real quick, we're still looking at installing some additional landscaping around the trees. The reconfiguration of the concrete ramp around Bubba's and the installation of, or the former Bubba's Bar, 211 Locust Street, and the installation of a fence still needs to occur. And then overall cleanup of the project is gonna be ongoing. They gotta replace some cracked concrete, stuff like that, and then the punch list that's been identified. We will be installing a handrail on the set of steps in the plaza that goes towards Water Street. The handrail is going to be in the middle instead of against the building, so it's visually, you can see it.
Good.
So
I have a note to ask about that, so.
So that's
appreciate it.
been established and ordered, I believe. Yeah, we're gonna be just, tidying up and wrapping up this project over the, next several months.
Just real quickly on that, I was out for a walk the other day and saw you just mentioned cracked concrete, so maybe that's on the list, but right across from Sherwood's Cove, that apron that goes down the riverfront, is that on there?
Yep, that was cracked by the asphalt paver.
Okay, thanks.
So they poured the concrete, then they put the asphalt in, and the weight of that machine destroyed that apron.
And the apron on Second Street there is also cracked, where they were using it as the lot for all the dirt. Comes out onto Second Street.
The apron going on the second, okay. Was that identified during the walkthrough? Do you call? Okay, thank you, Peter.
I saw this afternoon, there was a small backhoe, smallish backhoe that went down Hubbard Street with those kind of heavy tracks, and I thought, boy, that's probably not great for our streets.
So if they're rubberized tracks, they're okay.
Okay,
Yep, they have to be rubberized tracks, and that was probably part of the county's,
yeah.
the work the
I think
county is
so.
doing on the courthouse.
All right,
I noticed they put another layer of concrete around the Civil War monument this afternoon.
The furniture look really nice.
yeah.
Yeah, we got the rest of that out. We've got both the north and south security cameras installed and operating. So we've got all of our tables and chairs and picnic tables and high tops. And then the very last thing to go out, we've got some bistro sets that are going to go out in the plaza. And those are going to be the only pieces of furniture that are seasonal. So those will be out in the next couple of weeks. Yeah.
Very nice.
The parts of the sidewalk that are holding water, are those still being addressed?
So I know when I was out of the office, they did a punch list walkthrough. I'll follow up with Doug Codsman to see exactly what parts. I know we have some areas where there's some I might use the wrong term, water valves that are in the sidewalk. Like there's one in front of 142 Brady that's depressed. I don't think those are being reset, but I will look into that, okay?
Yeah, I know on the grid has like 3 sections that
So-
hold water in the middle.
So the one in front of On the Grid, just east of the curb cut to that small public parking lot, yeah, that should be replaced and reset. We noticed that at the end, right after it got poured, we noticed that one. So, yeah, that bird bath should be addressed then. And that's the technical term for sidewalks that hold water, bird baths.
Okay.
Should put more of them in, poor birds.
All right, item number 7, review of February revenue and expenditure report.
So this is a report that the finance director puts together. It's in your packet. If you have any questions, I mean, I think the packet went out Thursday morning or Thursday around 11:30. So we haven't heard anything from any council members, so it just shows you a point in time of where we are with our annual budget.
I usually look at that last page and just check where the amended budget's gonna land and revenues and expenditures. And it's actually down the deficit from last month.
Anything else on the expenditure report? All right, item number 8, review of council agenda. Any changes, anything you know? All right. So we will adjourn, what if we'll come back at 7:05. We'll reconvene for our regular meeting. We are adjourned. We got everybody? It is 7:05. I am going to call the meeting to order, regular session meeting. Can we get a roll call, please?
Absolutely.
Michaela?
Councilmember Redding,
Here.
Councilmember Zeter,
Here.
Councilmember Morgan,
Present.
Councilmember Andrus,
Here.
Councilmember Galloway,
Here.
Mayor Pro Tem Hands,
Present.
and Mayor Bird.
Here.
You have a quorum.
Thank you, Michaela. If you will rise and say the Pledge of Allegiance with us. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. Item 4A, approval of the regular council meeting agenda for March 25th, 2024.
Make a motion to approve?
Yeah. Second.
It has been moved and sort of seconded. So if I could, all in favor, please signal by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. Thank you. Item 5, approval of minutes. 5A, approval of the study session minutes from March 11th, 2024, council meeting.
I move we approve the minutes from the study session.
Support.
It has been moved and supported. All in favor, please signal by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. Item 5B, approval of the regular meeting minutes from March 11th, 2024, council meeting.
My comments at the end in section 13 aren't accurate.
In the regular meeting minutes?
Right. So it says that the Trestle Bridge engineering report is broken on the city website. It wasn't broken, it had the wrong engineering report on it. And I also was concerned about the text inside the, I guess the press release. Just because it said, from City Manager Dye, we are committed to taking action to address the structural concerns identified in the engineer's assessment, but I don't think that's what this city's doing right now. In fact, we've said in this meeting several times that our expectation as a city is the community is gonna come in and do something about that. I disagree with that, but I don't feel like telling the community that we're gonna do something about it is right when we're not. And this is our press release. And the reason the link is important is because the whole reason we did this press release was to give accurate information because inaccurate information was out there. So then to have the old report about the safety of that J.C. Park Bridge, when that report could be interpreted to say the pedestrian use is safe, rather than the new report that said pedestrian safe use is not safe, you know, that kind of failed in that effort. And it was up that way for a while. But then also, again, this idea that the staff is saying they're committed to taking action, when what I heard was J.C. Park Bridge is the community's responsibility, and we're gonna wait for the community to do something about it.
That's not what I
I
heard.
don't recall that at all
Oh,
either.
that's
but
exactly what was said, yeah.
The only thing we've ever talked about the community is that Scott Beltman was looking at things. But this is about the minutes, Dave, so if you'd like the minutes to reflect a change, then we can direct Michaela to amend the minutes themselves. This isn't about a press release at this point. So is there a way that you would like those minutes to read?
Well, I'm trying to share what I really said at the end of the last meeting.
Okay,
So
I mean, but that was before they did anything in the paper. I mean, you just mentioned what had been stated in the paper previously about the snow load. So, I mean, if we want to amend the minutes to,
Now you're getting real
Indicate.
confused about meeting order. This was, at the end of the last meeting, I said, wait, the wrong report is attached to the press
Okay,
release. and
so
There's misinformation in
do you
there.
just want that to be stated, that the
Yeah,
minutes
I-
need to reflect that it was
How you're
the
covered.
old?
However, we can accurately represent what I said, because it's not accurate right now.
Okay,
And if you want, give whatever language you want it to reflect to Michaela and have her update it so that it's accurate.
Okay,
In your motion to accept these minutes, just say it in the motion and then we can accept the changes as
Okay, I mean, I'm just looking for my statement to be accurate in here, so can I make a motion with approval of the minutes based on corrections to my statement at the end?
Yeah, I think that works, right, for you?
Yep,
All right, so that's
that's my
you're
motion.
making that
yep.
motion? All right.
Second.
We get a second? All right, it has been moved and seconded with that adjustment. So all in favor, please signal by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. Motion passes. Moving down to item number 9, public comment. If you are here for public comment, you can approach the podium. Please state your name and your address for the record. And we ask that you come to the podium so that we can get you on the recording. Thank you.
Steve Small, 116 Walcott. We had the two gentlemen there sitting by me, we all live in that neighborhood up there, and Joel so graciously said, hey, let's get together and have a meeting, and one of my thoughts was, I live up in the neighborhood there, you know, and I don't know the acreage, and what I would like to do is compare the acreage of our neighborhood to this development, just to see how compacted it's gonna be, like, just don't look like too much space between houses, and I know they wanna make money as much as they can, but I wouldn't think they'd wanna be shoved so tight together in there. And then still, I'm worried about kids, there's no less than, gotta be 10, 11 kids running around that neighborhood, isn't there? Riding bicycles, not paying attention like kids do, and I'm really concerned about that, and I would really hope that they could find another way to get in there. There was an old road, Bill, and you'll know this, by Chuck Wander's place, between Chuck and I don't know who lives in the other house. It's just grassy now, but one of Thelma's kids was telling me that's how they used to go down there with a truck or a car if they wanted to get down to Wander's Pond, so. Anyway, thank you again for your time, and thank you, Joel, for making that offer, and we're certainly gonna take advantage of it.
Thank you.
Hello, Ray Birkin, 304 Riverside Drive. I'm also here on the same subject. My concern basically is the safety of the neighborhood and the amount of traffic that we'll be adding to the streets there. We kind of like our quiet little neighborhood. I know if I was Bill Morgan and all of a sudden there was a lot of cars in his neighborhood driving past his house, you know, it's a safety issue to me, and I'd like to see an alternative, access point developed. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else for public comment? All right. Thank you very much. Moving to item 11, reports from boards, commissions, and city offices. Item 11A1, Downtown Development Authority from March 13th, 2024. I will take this one. We had quite a bit of discussion going on. Bill, as you were asking earlier about sidewalks, we are going through proposed rules and regulations for sidewalks and reviewing how we want to regulate signage that businesses put up, and open flags, and making sure that pedestrians can walk without having to duck under flags and walk around signs and things. So we're working through that, so we should be seeing that here at the council level here in the next couple of months, or a month or two. We also looked at our events budget and where the DDA funds are going as far as supporting what's happening with the downtown events like Bridgefest and Jubilee and New Year's Eve and those types of things, and how we want to continue to support that. We looked at event sponsorships, of bringing in other businesses and sponsorships. And we looked at the letter that's being used to recruit those sponsors. And then we also discussed a downtown parking lot assessment that had been brought up here in council at a couple of times, I think, but that the improvements to the parking lots downtown are disproportionately benefiting businesses that are down there. So the idea of creating a parking lot assessment, which I know other cities have, that would allow or have businesses help fund the maintenance and improvements of those parking lots. So we're kind of discussing the potential of that. Did I miss anything, Parker or Joel?
No, I think you covered it well.
All right. And, yeah, so there was a lot of conversation happening at the last DDA meeting. So, item 11A2, Public Spaces Commission from March 13th, 2024. Councilmember Morgan?
Yes, met on the 13th of March, as Roger said. The committee was updated on the improvements of the Rossman Park, which is basically just cut back only to the resurfacing of the pickleball court. And I think something about water access too was going to be addressed, isn't it? Didn't they go over there, Parker?
Yeah, that's
Water
correct.
faucet?
Yeah,
That's what-
the scope of the project has been reduced to just the
Yeah.
quadrant that has the pickleball court.
Then Mahan Park, discussed the $150,000 grant from the MEDC. Cost of the project is going to be approximately $400,000. They are trying to get a no-fund-me type of page, or have a no-fund-me type, GoFundMe type page, taken care of. There was a tremendous amount of cleanup done in the Oakwood Cemetery because of trees, and they got all the leaves picked up there. That was all taken care of. Let's see. They were discussed the replacement of the 4 trees on the riverfront that had been destroyed. They're trying to come up with different ways and different things that they can do with that. Because of the water and the electricity that passes underneath there, they're a little afraid that they can't replace them. So they discussed about putting a raised bed in there and possibly doing that, having seating area around it. They, that was one thing thrown around. Arbor Day is April the 26th at 10 a.m. in front of the library. They're planting a tree that was taken out from the streetscape. Also, this year Lori's going to do something with the Little Tiger Preschool for the Arbor Day. And Bridge Road Triangle, plans were shared to replace the vegetation with a variety of low-growing plants this spring. Anything else? Did I miss something?
I think you got it.
Thank you, Bill.
Yep.
Item 11B, Finance Department. Item 11B1, request to approve accounts payable and payroll. Peter?
It's requested for the city council to approve accounts payable in the amount of $1,628,774,052 and payroll in the amount of $116,105.52 for a total disbursement of $1,744,880.04. Motion to approve.
I make a motion that we approve the payment to,
Second.
second.
It has been moved and seconded. All in favor, please signal by saying aye. Oh,
Water and sewer, can I just get like a high level, I think it's like 1.3 million between the two for half a month. I'm seeing like bonds, 897,000 for a bond. Like I'm
That's the
trying to,
SRF bond payment.
I'm trying to piece together, so 1.3 million total out of water and sewer, 750 out of sewer, 550 out of water, and this is from March 11th to March 25th. So it seems like something exceptional happened in there.
So Dave, the first payment, you're talking about $897,745.65.
Yeah, is that related to the water and sewer funds, or is that a totally
That is an
different?
SRF bond payment that we had to make, the U.S. National Bank Association.
And Joel, just to, not to interrupt you, but.
please do.
Those are split between water and sewer, and that's paying on the SRF bonds, which are multiple. There's, I was just gonna look it up, but, it's multiple bonds from, but they're all the SRF bonds that we have for water and sewer.
How often do we end up paying that amount?
We make two payments a year for interest and one payment on principal. And they're usually, generally in April and October. We make interest and, principal payments. The principal payment, this includes principal on, a couple of them, but it's split up. It's interest on some and then principal and interest on some of the other ones.
Okay, thank you.
Yep.
Thank you, Tracy. Item, oh, sorry, we didn't vote.
You did vote. The question came after the all in favor, say aye.
We didn't,
We,
we didn't. We
I
didn't
don't think most of us voted.
Okay.
vote. There
Yeah,
wasn't a
the
vote.
person next to me said aye.
Oh,
Motion is on the table. I
so
just offered
the rest of us
discussion.
can vote. We already have, do we already have two votes? So, aye?
Aye.
Aye.
All right, so now we have a full vote. So 11D1, review and approval of the 3-year agreement with Bob Talsma Plumbing for the inside plumbing work on city-related lead water services. Doug?
This is, as stated, Mayor, for a plumber to do the inside work when the city replaces lead service lines around the city. Code requires a licensed plumber to do the connections inside of the structure. We put it out for bid a few weeks ago, opened bids last week. We had 3 bidders, Rogers Plumbing, Sumner Plumbing, and Talsma Plumbing. 2 of them come in pretty close. Really, the deciding factor was the annual escalator between the 2, being a 6% annual escalator, and no annual escalator for the 3 years. It was pointed out to me that for the Talsma Plumbing one, well, let me back up one step there. The bid documents required that the plumbers submit a copy of their plumbing license and contractor license. At bid opening, Rogers Plumbing had forgot to include it. He later brought it in approximately 45 minutes later. Talsma Plumbing had submitted one, but it was their old license. They emailed me a copy of their current license today. So they have both submitted licenses, current licenses. So as I said, coming down to it, it's the annual escalating factor. So it was staff's recommendation to go with the most cost-effective method of hiring a plumber.
Can I ask a question? The pit service fee for Talsma, what is less?
He did not include that in there. He said it would be less than that. It's, instead of putting the meter in the house, it would be in a pit meter, so he doesn't have to put in the meter setter or meter horn that the city supplies the meter setter. He just, the plumber puts it in. So.
So it's just less than $450?
Less than the $550.
Less than his quote for the
Oh,
general
less than the
service.
service fee. Gotcha, okay. All right, I just wanted clarification.
Yep.
Any other questions?
Yeah,
on
I have a
this?
question. Have we used Talsma before?
We have not.
We already had Tim Rogers' license and stuff, so I think that is not a reason to not bid him. And how do we know what kind of work Talsma does?
We do
And
not.
it's sad that we can't stay locally. That's just my opinion.
Who has the contract now?
Sumner Plumbing has it now.
And Sumner came in at $750 and $450.
And his current price is $450.
So we jumped significantly. This came at 550 and less than 550, but no escalator, and Tim's has a 6% escalator per year.
So, as the bid document states, it is council's decision to pick whichever contractor they want to use. Staff's decision is based solely just on
The bids.
monetary.
Where's Talsma out of? Holland?
I would say Holland.
He's out of Holland.
We put up an RFP last time we did this, right? Like 3 years
Yes.
ago?
Last time, only Rogers Plumbing and Sumner Plumbing submitted a quote, and that was 2019.
Yeah.
Let me see, the number of years that we had this contract for, and it's an escalator per year, so is this like, I was trying to see, is this every year, or is this,
So it would be 550 for the first year, starting when it's approved, so essentially April, tomorrow, for 550 for a year, and then it'd go up 6%. A year from then, it'd go up another 6%.
oh, you're talking Rogers, I'm just saying,
Yes,
how long is the overall contract that we're doing
it
here?
would be 3 years.
3 years, so it's 6%
18% compounded.
and that compound 6, so. I'm fine with the lowest bidder, because that's the people's money, and they're the lowest bidder once it comes to year 2 and 3. They're the same bidder, well, technically a little bit less for additionally hours, but they're gonna be pretty much the same. Now, how fast they do work is the next question. So how much I get for a bill. What's Tim Rogers typically been doing per service connection hourly, like total hours?
Because Sumner has the
Or Sumner,
the
sorry,
contract right now,
not Tim.
they're, it's 450, so for the connections.
Okay, so they don't have any additional hours, it's just a straight 450, and then,
Typically not, no, the standard, I mean, there are occasion, and I do not remember what his hourly rate is, but the typical connections, I get a bill for 450.
Maybe that's why he went up to 750, if he wasn't
Yeah.
charging for additional hours.
Plus, the estimate from Talsma isn't even made out to the city of Allegan, it's made out to Trowbridge Street.
I'd be willing to give preference to local vendors. I think we've even got a resolution from like 2008 that supports that. They all look equal-ish on paper to me. I mean, there's differences, but it's not huge. Quality of work, I don't know. I don't have experience with any of these plumbers, so
I've used both Tim Rogers and Sumner Plumbing on different,
Totally. Been happy with both of
yeah,
them.
me too. Not crazy about the 6% escalation annually, but I do like supporting local businesses.
I wish the escalator wasn't on there, but I don't know what to make of that.
He's covering costs, future costs like the rest of us are trying to. That was my guess. So I would entertain, if someone wants to make a motion to reflect those feelings.
I make a motion, we hire Tim Rogers Plumbing.
We have support for that? We can support it, and then if council, the majority of council doesn't support it, we can just vote it down.
To get the ball rolling, I'll support.
All right. It has been moved and supported. All in favor, please signal by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed, nay?
Nay.
Where are we at? Is that four and three, but who? I couldn't tell who was,
It failed, the motion.
it failed.
Yeah.
Okay. All right, so I'll entertain another motion.
There was 4 nays?
That's what
That's what I'm being told.
I was a nay.
I didn't see anything from Councilmember Morgan, which by default, under, I believe it's Robert's rules, no vote is in the affirmative. So the
no,
vote I got was 3 to 4.
3 to 4 defeating the motion? Okay.
That's correct.
So then I'll entertain any other motions.
I make a motion to approve the 3-year agreement with Bob Talsma Plumbing.
Second.
It has been moved and seconded. All in favor, please signal by saying aye.
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 Opposed, nay?
Nay.
Motion passes. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, Doug. Item 11E, Public Works. 11E1, update and approval of the Rossman Park Improvement Project.
Thank you, Mayor Byrd. As discussed by Councilmember Morgan during the review of the Public Spaces Commission meeting, and I believe we discussed this during a study session or made council aware of this, that we had to go back to the drawing board on the Rossman Park. Last year, the state of Michigan awarded the city of Allegan a $112,000 grant to improve the northern 2 quadrants of Rossman Park. The total estimate for these improvements was $159,000. This means the city's match would be $47,950 cents and some change. However, when we went out to bid, the bids came in very high at $289,087. That means the city would have had to provide $177,087 as our match. We then reevaluated the project, the finances, and approached the DNR and the original bidder to see if we could do a reduced scope. That reduced scope would be to just focus on the pickleball side of the quadrants. Improving the pickleball court was the main focus of this grant from day one to begin with. In addition to the pickleball resurfacing, we would be looking at installing a sidewalk from the sidewalk along Fifth Street there to the entrance to the pickleball courts, putting in a bench, some trash can recycling or some trash can receptacles, drinking fountain, as well as an ADA accessible parking lot, which is required per the grant. What that does is the reduced scope reduces the total project cost down to $198,000 and some change. That would increase our originally planned match from $47,950 to $86,286 for this project. So you're looking at approximately a $38,000 increase to do this project. If we don't do this, then we just say no to the grant. We do have to pay the costs that Avonmarsh has spent so far on the design and the bidding. The purchase orders have already been approved for that. And, at this rate, we'd have to go back to the state next year, with a little bit of a eating crow if we apply for more grants from them. It's staff's recommendation that, we stay true to improving the pickleball courts section of this project and increase, just add to the quality of life in this neighborhood. I do not believe we have any drinking fountains in this neighborhood to begin with, so people will go for walks. This also includes a drinking fountain for the dogs, dog walkers, stuff like that. That just really encourages, use of this park as well. And then if I recall correctly, when we shared with council that this bid came in high, there was concerns made by council about this being the third project that Avonmarsh kind of missed the mark on. And we have had a very, personal conversation with representatives from Avonmarsh, about just missing the mark on their estimates. Questions for staff about the project reduced scope?
So now it's the drinking fountains now. the Water Street parking lot drinking fountain, I don't think's been operational, especially the dog one for most years. So it's still, it's a big bite to say an original project estimate, where it was, what was it, 159? Is still 198 at a reduced scope. So pretty much 200K.
Priority.
I think because we have grant funding for it.
Yeah, we had grant funding, but it's nowhere where it needs to be because our estimates were so far off.
It's because, yeah, we want Jason grant money for it, but I don't know why this was the most important thing.
So the Public Spaces Commission voted on making these improvements and voted on going for the grants. City Council authorized the resolution to apply for the grants. Yeah, I would say it became a priority because your advisory board that's responsible for advising you on public spaces said, hey, council, do something here. And then City Council was presented an opportunity to apply for a grant, and nobody at that time said, this park's not important, let's not invest in it, or look elsewhere for other stuff.
Well, at the
So-
time, we were also looking at estimates and looking at what the grant would be. And what
Fully
that would-
understood.
So, for me, the paying for the design isn't that big of a deal because we can turn around and reuse it in any future grant applications. With now knowing what the current bidding looks like, we can apply for grants that would make it feasible to complete the project in a budget so that we're not having to do a budget adjustment of 38,000. So I'm always willing to turn it down and say, yep, or it's not really eating crow to me. It's saying, hey, our budget wasn't right. And we'll come back to you with a new design or the current design with a better, saying, we need this much for the grant to make it feasible.
Makes us less, I hear what you're saying and don't disagree with you, but it does make us less attractive the next time we apply for a grant.
It's a weird shaming kind of thing there.
It's true. I mean, I write grants for a living, and if we got a grant and then gave the money back, it wouldn't look good. I mean, I'm not saying we won't ever get a grant again, but it's just gonna be the reality. I think we've got a good history, though. I don't think that we're gonna get completely cut off, but it's certainly something to consider.
Well, yeah, I suppose that's unfortunate, but it's still $86,000 going to a pickleball court and a drinking fountain when we've got a broken bridge and no street maintenance.
So from my standpoint, it's also looking at the original estimate of 159. Even if I add 20% to it as a margin, I'm at 190. This is now a reduced scope, still at 198. And so for me, I currently can't support it.
I live in the neighborhood and I can't support it.
Any more discussion?
No, we need to make a motion in the affirmative and then vote the way you'd like to vote. So I do make a motion to approve the Rossman Park Improvement Project.
We have support.
I support.
It has been moved and supported. All in favor, please signal by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed, nay.
Nay.
Motion fails. All right. Item 11E2, approval of an amendment to Shoreliners Purchase Order for lane striping. Joel?
Sure. Earlier this year, council awarded a PO to Shoreline Striping out of Grand Rapids to restripe various major streets throughout the city. We have now requested that they give us an estimate to restripe the downtown streets as well as parking lots, various parking lots throughout the city as well. You have seen the original was $8,671.75. The change order is $6,523.28 for a total of $15,195. We have this funding available in our major pavement marking and local pavement marking accounts. So we're recommending we do this amendment so we can clean up, our downtown lane stripes.
Joel, does that include the new striping that went down with the streetscape then?
Correct, yes.
Okay.
And just for a reminder for those who have not paid attention, historically, the city has always repainted our stripes downtown every year in our parking lots. And we held off for the past 3 years because we knew this street project was coming up. So we're just restarting that practice.
Mr. Mayor, may I ask a question? I'll wait. Yeah, sorry.
Thank you. We'd love to talk to you after. Yeah, any other, you're going to make a motion?
I was. I'll make the motion to approve the amendment to Shoreliners Purchase Order for lane striping.
I support it.
It has been moved and supported. All in favor, please signal by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. Motion passes. Item 11E3, adoption of resolution 24.09 to apply for a $1,153,300 MDOT local bridge program grant to spot paint the upper portion of the Second Street Bridge and replace the wooden pedestrian boardwalk along the south side of the Second Street Bridge.
So MDOT has several grant programs. They're in silos. We can't just apply for whatever we want to apply for. One of those silos is their local bridge program. They've announced, they've opened up the funding round for fiscal year 27, to receive grant applications to improve, fix, repair local bridges. We did inquire whether or not pedestrian bridges qualified. Their answer is no, only vehicular bridges qualified. So Second Street Bridge qualifies. When we did the deck replacement and painted the undercarriage of the bridge, we knew eventually we'd have to come back and address the top part or the upper part of the bridge, as well as that pedestrian connection. Since that pedestrian connection is part of a vehicular bridge, that qualifies. I want to be clear on that. It's just the standalone non-motorized trails don't qualify. This is a significant grant that they cover 95% of the cost. We are estimating that, the total work will be $1.2 million. As you saw in the resolution, the grant application is $1.153 million is what we are applying for. For us to apply for grants, council has to approve resolutions. That's part of the state funding program for grants. So we are recommending that we apply for this because this is part of the infrastructure, many pieces of infrastructure that the city has to maintain.
I make a motion that we apply for the $1,153,300 MDOT local bridge program grant.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded. All in favor, please signal by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed, nay. Motion passes. Item 11F, City Manager and City Clerk. 11F1, Review and Discussion on Proposed Amendments to Ordinances 17, 25, 28, and 29.
Thank you, Mayor. Since the study session was full, I needed to add this to the regular session. This typically is discussed during the study session, but we want to continue with the review of the ordinances that staff and the council subcommittee and our city attorney has been working on. So the first one is Chapter 17, Offenses. In your packet, you received a report. Each ordinance, you received a summary of the proposed changes. Then you received a red line version showing the changes. And then you also received a clean version of the ordinances. After we get through these three, I think we have 2 more to go. And then we would have updated all of the chapters of our ordinances by the end of this fiscal year, which was the goal of ours. So for Chapter 17, Offenses, the summary, what we plan on doing is we're going to remove the provisions that are duplicative under state law, similar to other parts of our ordinances where we just repeated what was in state law. We're removing that stuff. We are adding a new section to indicate that offenses are misdemeanors unless expressly stated otherwise. We are adding a section that addresses nuisance gatherings. This is similar to disorderly houses, but it's clear that it's the gathering that's the disorderly, not the house. We are revising the city's curfew ordinance to provide more robust exceptions, including an exception that allows minors 15 years of age to stay out past the curfew when attending community events or events at the fairgrounds. The violations are generally municipal civil infractions, but the third offense and any subsequent offense would be misdemeanors. And then we're replacing the current regulations on firearms and other projectile weapons to be consistent with new developments in the state and federal law. Any questions about the changes to Chapter 17?
I'll say there are some things in here that I think make sense, and I really appreciate getting the red line on this one so I can see all the changes. There are other things in here that I don't really think make a lot of sense, but my biggest problem is that I don't see how this is gonna make a meaningful impact on our community. Like, I get the idea of cleaning up ordinances, but it seems like we did this as like, city manager talks to city attorney sends back a draft, and then it's in front of us, and maybe the police chief looked at it. And I think the piece that's missing is that community engagement part. Like, if we change this ordinance and we don't have any communication with the public about what we're changing or why we're changing it, and we don't have a plan for, well, this was the problem in the community that we want to start addressing and enforcing, then it doesn't go anywhere. And so I just don't support the way that we're approaching these changes. And there are a few things in here I could squabble about and try to point out, but I don't want to waste everybody's time if you're all a yes already and I'm a no.
Right now, it's just a discussion about it. We're not voting on anything.
We're not gonna vote tonight?
No. The staff report, I think, was pretty clear. Review
Under
and
the city
discuss.
manager and clerk level.
Yeah, all ordinances require a two-part reading as well.
Well, then that's my discussion.
And then the other thing I would mention, part of the process that I don't think you touched on, Dave, was staff met with a subcommittee of council. Councilmember Zeter, Mayor Pro Tem Hands, and Councilmember Andrus met with us every week for probably 3 or 4 months straight going through this. And, you know, council members, you are elected by the constituents, by the residents of the city. Hopefully you are talking to residents in the city and carrying forward what you're hearing from your neighbors, your customers, your friends, or just people who call you because they know you're a council member, and your number and emails on our city website.
I don't have much issue with the current Chapter 17 changes because most of it's just repealing a lot of stuff because it's already in state law, which is what we were trying to do.
And that was a lot of the discussion of some of the ordinance that we had. Was it still necessary to have those ordinances? So that's when Nick kind of weighed in of, yes, you need to keep this one. No, you do not need to keep that one. So yeah, the city attorney was definitely consulted on all of that. But with our process of ordinances, we do hold a public hearing. So if anyone reads through that and has any issues or concerns, they're welcome to state those, and we can make amendments before we approve those at that point. Or
Yeah.
it's all on the website as well for them to review in the packet.
I mean, very similar to how it would be done if there's a legislation in Lansing. We don't, it's out there for us to look at if we want to, but we're not.
Is there anything in 17, Dave, that specifically, or right now we're just looking at 17?
I think nuisance gatherings are kind of a squishy definition. I mean, there's times when our social district could be in violation of nuisance gatherings. You know, like if there's a bunch of people standing around drinking, are they a nuisance gathering? Removing cruelty to animals, you know, I'm hoping that's something covered in state law. But overall, it's just, am I gonna see a big difference based off of, I mean, do we even know how much we paid the attorney to rewrite these? Or are we gonna be doing something to let the community know, hey, we rewrote all the ordinances, you should go check them out? Or are we expecting really the community to be monitoring our minutes and agendas and you guys may feel like that's on the community and, but from my perspective, I don't think we're gonna see a big improvement in ordinance compliance without that community engagement piece. And if it's not proactive, if we sit here and we go, well, the community, it's their fault, they don't come talk to us and they don't listen to us, and that's not gonna be a productive effort.
Well, I think a lot of this effort is just to clean up our ordinances because they were just so overwhelming and redundant with a lot of state law. So it's just streamlining and making it easier to understand what the ordinances are.
I see more than that in here and in other revisions we've done.
Well, certainly, it wasn't only, right, it wasn't only that, but that was a big part of why this is going. And you saying that you don't see how it's gonna benefit the community, well, part of it is that we wanna have ordinances that are understandable. And I think this goes a long way to doing that, and that's what,
But if we don't enforce them, why change them or even have them?
that's a,
That was
That's
part
another
of
discussion.
also the discussion was that a lot of these weren't enforceable. When we had Jay in about it, was why we're doing this, is they weren't enforceable. So that's partly why we're rewriting them, was the ability to enforce them was lacking. That was brought up a couple times with Jay, so normally he would just go under MCL for a lot of this anyway. But I don't see much in this that I object to, and specifically in 17. Any other?
I'm just gonna say again, I brought it up before, we started this process, I don't know,
a long time ago.
year and a half ago. We gave updates, periodically, definitely, and if there were issues with the way that the committee was running, and people had concerns with a lack of community involvement, that really should have been brought up when we started this process. This has been a goal of city councils for multiple years to get these done. So, to bring this up now, I understand that's a concern you have.
Well, this isn't the first time I brought this up.
Exactly, but, and I've brought this up before as well, that when we established a subcommittee, we as a council could have said, we want some community stakeholders involved, we want to do this or that, and we didn't. And this is the way that it was, and this is the way that it's been for an extremely long time. This was a lot of effort put in by the subcommittee, it's been a lot of effort by staff and by the attorney, and I'm very proud of it. So, if you don't want to vote for that, that's your right to do that. But I do feel like this was needed and we accomplished it. And I think in the end, the community will be appreciative of the cleanup as well.
I feel that we do have community involvement in this. One is we're elected officials. That's, we're part of the community. That's what we're here to do, is represent. And part of that is legislate. And so we're legislating. We're putting it out here in the open at our meeting to review it. If I get any feedback from the public, feel free, as you're watching on the YouTubes, give me your feedback on this. The agenda has it in it. We'll be voting on it in the future, which will take 2 parts, a public hearing. And they can, of course, have feedback then. So there's lots of times for the feedback to happen. Now, am I gonna go out and create a subcommittee of a bunch of people in the community and make this process 10 to 15 times longer? No, I'm not gonna do that, because we're trying to get this done in a year, but that would really extend the timeline to get all the ordinances cleaned up to where they're enforceable, where they're simple in their language, where it's easy for somebody to read it. So I'm fine with 17. There was something in 25 that I would like to talk about, so if we're done with 17, I'd like to move on to the other sections, if there's no comments on 17.
All right, 25, the summary, we're clarifying how public improvements are financed by providing that improvements benefiting specific parcels of land would be financed by special assessments on those lands, while improvements benefiting the entire city are funded from city general funds or general city funds. The current ordinance has, similar language, but only in the context of sidewalks. So we really wanted to clean that up, because you can do assessments for roads, water, sewer, park, a multitude of stuff. As Roger mentioned, the DDA is talking about what a downtown parking lot assessment would look like. So we wanted to clarify that in our ordinance here. We needed to remove language regarding the procedure of imposing special assessments. It's adequately provided in other sections, and what this does is it removes the ability for, the left hand to say something opposite of the right hand. So since it's already covered in other parts of the code, we don't need to address it here. We remove language that suggests that cost sharing for infrastructure projects can be mandated without a special assessment. Yeah, that's legally questionable. So even though it was in our ordinance, doesn't mean it's justified legally. So we remove that unless it's part of a contract. We are going to adopt MDOT specifications for all infrastructure projects in the public right-of-way. Right now, we do not do that. That's something we need to do. So when a developer wants to install a road and we say do it to our specifications, we can actually point to something on what the specifications are. We're making minor modifications to wording throughout the entire ordinance as it relates to just making it more clear and easier to read. We're going to provide for most functions to be performed by the city manager or designee, which provides the flexibility with respect to staffing. The intent is that most functions would be performed either by the city manager office or the DPW, and by functions, we mean approvals. We're repealing section 25.41, which included outdated and unnecessary definitions, and we're providing concrete standards that would justify denying a request to perform work in the right-of-way that are intended to protect the public health, safety, welfare. And I think, was that all? Yeah, and then continuing, this was a long one, sorry. We're repealing 25-49, which provided that the requirements for construction in the right-of-way did not apply to the city. If we're going to make the private sector go through some hoops, then the city also should probably go through those same hoops. We're going to provide that all property owners have a duty to clear snow and ice from the sidewalks abutting their properties. Historically, this was just said in the downtown. We were saying if you have a sidewalk that abuts your property, it's your responsibility. That's common language in most ordinances, throughout Michigan. We're not getting rid of our sidewalk plowing program. This is just clarifying the responsibility there. We're outlining regulations for business activities on downtown sidewalks, including signage, sidewalk cafe service, and the placement of sales racks and furniture. The DDA is further looking into this at the same time. So we're going to, combine those two as we see fit. And then with respect to the Metro Act permits, we're going to remove a requirement that staff file an annual report regarding the use and disposition of funds annually distributed by the clerk. State law only requires that of larger populations than what Allegan is. Mayor Pro Tem Hands, you said you had questions, correct?
One would be the sidewalk clearing, so, which comes into downtown. If we're doing the downtown snow removal still, we need something there, because there should be an assessment on the properties, specifically because that one was specifically always, they were supposed to take care of it. And I'm appreciative of it being plowed and taken care of, and I don't mind if they say, well, you gotta pay something for it, because otherwise I'd be out shoveling the snow myself. So, I'm not sure in the right of way, because all the sidewalks are actually owned by the city, because we put them all in. We don't have those where you have to put your own sidewalk in. So that's one of those squishy areas for me, because it's city property. Why am I taking care of city property as a property owner?
The old, why do I have to mow the right of way?
Yep.
Conversation or discussion or argument, depending on who you talk to about that.
But it is a big one, again, to be clear with folks. If this is what we're saying, now you're responsible for your sidewalk, we probably want to clarify that, no, you're not really responsible, we're going to plow it, if that's what we mean. And when we told businesses they were responsible, but then we didn't hold them responsible for it. And there's also the removal of like an annual notice to comply with those requirements.
Yeah, that was for the downtown, I believe. Because we used to do annual notices for all downtown businesses. We'd get a notice at the beginning of winter to say, just don't forget, you gotta plow your own stuff. But since we've been plowing it for them, I don't think we've been sending them.
Correct. And then Dave, I think you're also correct. We are removing that annual notice. Is that what you're referring to, Dave?
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah.
And what's the purpose of removing that notice?
Streamlining the work for city staff.
Because we don't actually require them to clear their sidewalk, we just say it in the ordinance now.
Yes, so we look at the zoning ordinance. If your property is
Yeah.
zoned R2, we don't send out an annual notice saying what kind of uses can occur in an R2 zone district.
So you're talking about downtown, notice to downtown businesses or to residents outside?
So historically, we only required properties in the downtown district to remove the snow. And then that required that the ordinance had an annual notice that would go out saying, hey, it's November 15th or whatever, just a reminder. And then we removed that work from staff by neglect, by just not doing it. And then in this ordinance, we're removing that requirement altogether because personally and professionally, we don't see the benefit of having staff do that extra work and sending that notice out.
We're not gonna enforce the ordinance, why send out a notice to say that you're supposed to do this per the ordinance if,
Yeah, we didn't even follow our own ordinance.
Yeah.
so this may come back up again with the snow removal in the future, I'm hearing, because for assessments and et cetera, for the downtown.
Oh, to pay for the snow removal program we have right now? Yeah. Thankfully, this year we had a very light winter
Yep.
for snow. And we had that one big storm, but other than that, sidewalk clearing, only occurred a few times. And depending on the businesses you talk to, didn't occur enough.
You didn't do a very good job. You just went right down the middle, and that was it.
I saw that a few days too. It's like,
Terrible.
still a lot of snow here.
Anything else on section 25?
All right, moving on to section 28, which is our traffic and motor vehicle section. We're going to clarify the prohibition of bicycles, skateboards, and rollerblades in the city's downtown. Make all violations of that prohibition a municipal civil infraction rather than a criminal misdemeanor. We're going to properly adopt the Michigan Uniform Traffic Code. It references the UTC, but it does not clearly adopt it as the law of the city. So we're going to adopt it as the law of the city. We're going to adopt Michigan's super drunk law, which increases the maximum penalties for operating a motor vehicle with a blood alcohol content of 0.17 or more. We're going to expressly authorize the police department to tow vehicles at the expense of the owner when the owner has previously received 5 or more citations for illegal parking. We're going to clarify language that pertains to the operation of the Parking Violations Bureau. We're authorizing the city manager to waive the prohibition of yard parking, subject to approved standards that require such parking to occur only on improved surfaces. We're going to repeal the requirement that snowplow operators obtain a city-issued license. This was recommended by the Ordinance Review Committee. And we're going to repeal the prohibition of the use of jake brakes. In Michigan, you can't prohibit jake brakes. They are a safety mechanism on semi-trucks. They are annoying to me as heck. I hate when I hear them going off and they're coming down Water Tower Hill, but you can't prohibit them.
Better than a semi coming down and not being able to stop at the corner.
I would agree. They're still annoying to me, though.
So in this section, the only one that I was looking at it again, Dave brought up, was the bicycles on the sidewalk. We prohibit them in the parking lots as well. I'm not quite sure why we prohibit bicycles in parking lots.
Into alleys and boardwalks.
The alleys was debatable, because the only 2 alleys downtown are pretty much walkways.
We also don't provide safe bike paths on our streets.
Peter, can you let me know what section where we say you
Would
can't be in
be
parking lots?
28-1, bicycles, skateboards, rail, and similar devices. It's specifically in the downtown area.
It also increases the scope of what's considered downtown to include like the Mill District. So I couldn't ride a bike through the Mill District.
Well, you can on the street.
Yeah. you
Mill
can-
District Road, you could.
That's why I was concerned with the parking lot. Like, I consider the parking lot pretty much the street, as long as you're following all traffic directions in the parking lot. I don't really care if you use your bicycle in a parking lot.
We're also going after the kids now too. I see, we said, okay, now even kids, if we catch you riding your bike in the parking lot, we're gonna ticket you.
Oh, we used to do that anyways, trust me.
No, the ordinance said if you're under 17, you can't get ticketed.
Yeah, you would just get it confiscated.
Speaking from experience, Peter?
So the subcommittee decided to change that.
But yeah,
We actually had a lot of conversation about like what constitutes a juvenile and how to charge and that kind of thing. So yeah, we did discuss all of that.
Let me look at the clean version. I know our current does the same. Our current does exclude, or does include parking lots under that section. So I don't know if we just didn't look at it. I personally don't care if you ride a bike in the parking lot behind here, because a lot of times you'd be cutting through.
Honestly, I see it more as a thoroughfare,
Yeah,
as
it's
a parking lot, but
But I don't know, I'm trying to look for the clean version. Let's see, clean. It's like the very first 28. Let's go down.
Okay, so 28.1, it shall be unlawful to ride skateboards, or rollerblades, coasters, toy vehicles, or other similar devices in the city's downtown in any alley or on any sidewalk, boardwalk, or public parking lot. Okay, so,
I didn't catch it when we were in the review. Personally, I would have probably just said take that out.
okay, so remove parking lots.
Yeah. And if an alleyway is designed for a car, I don't see how we can prevent it in alleyways that are designed for a car.
Correct. Yep, remove,
We have to.
you can still, you can access it through the parking lot.
Yeah.
You can access it through the parking lot. Also, just, no, the alley behind Phil Siegler's building.
Yeah, that one, that's accessible.
Yeah,
I'm talking about this one.
this one you cannot. This is not an alley. And then, for semantics, an alley is typically publicly owned. Neither of those are publicly owned. They're all owned by the business owners. I'm struggling to know of an alley that is in the city of Allegan off the top of my head that we would maintain.
So I just say take alley and parking lots out of it, because
Yep, and we can do that. And then B, the city council may, upon request, allow for exceptions to this section for special events. So if there's a special event, we can do that. I will tell you that at the DDA and in conversations with downtown business owners, they do talk about kids, and by kids, I mean teenagers riding their bikes on the sidewalks. And, how, disruptive that is to people who almost walk out, they're walking out the store and they almost get smoked by it, a kid doing, 15, 20 miles an hour on his BMX. If we want to make an exception, and this is something the DDA's talked about, toddlers on striders, the ones without training wheels, that's the thing now where they just run their legs next to it. The DDA is comfortable, allowing that kind of an exception, where parents walking next to them. But, the majority of, people who ride bikes, that is what the roads are for, in Michigan's, traffic code. You ride with traffic, you stop at stop signs, you use the hand signals for your turning and so forth.
Tell traffic that. I mean, really, you ride a bike around here, it's dangerous.
Yep. Not denying that.
Joel, I just had one thing with the Parking Violations Bureau. I know we had discussed, like, moving payments to City Hall at one point, like having all of the payments received here.
Correct.
Is that just like staff's recommendation to keep it at the police department? No?
So,
Because we had discussed, at one level, we'd even talked about not having like a cash box at the police department because everything could be accepted here at City Hall.
so I'm
I don't know
going
how
through
everybody
here.
feels about that, but
Do you know what section that talked about where it's being paid at the police department?
28-43.
Location, the parking lot within the Allegan Police Department building. So the next line, a subsequent location for the Bureau may be established by resolution of the City Council. The chief of police shall appoint qualified city employees to administer the bureau and adopt rules and regulations. So that line, so
We
we
could
added
do a
that second
resolu-
line that, and have it here at City Hall.
Okay, so, I mean, I just wanted to mention that we had discussed having all payments received here at
Yep.
City Hall, so.
And if you
whether
guys-
that's something council wants to do later, or just,
And if you'd like to strike that right now and just make the parking lot violations bureau here at City Hall, we can do that, Delora.
that's up to everybody, I mean.
I'm fine with the wording, we just gotta have a resolution later to establish it, which could come along with the adoption of it.
Yeah.
It allows flexibility in the future if we wanna move it to a different location, back to the police or whatever if we wanna do.
And when you look at an end user, making it easier for the end user, if a police officer, cites you, typically they go to the police department, even for like the code enforcement stuff. And it's like, no, you gotta come talk to us about how you're gonna, clean up your yard and stuff like that. So, I think that's why we kept the police department the first one, and then we added that second one saying, hey, we can go in this way. Any other questions about this section?
So in section 2854 on the waivers for parking and what is it? Unimproved surfaces, it's, is there, I don't see anything, it says something about issued a temporary parking permit, but it doesn't give any time frame on that parking permit. Do we need to have that in there? Is there going to be, is it gonna be limited?
So the second sentence there, the city manager shall establish standards for such waivers, which shall require a minimum that such waivers be granted for, only for areas covered by an improved surface such as pavement, pavers, crushed stone, et cetera. I think of those standards is where we address the,
Time frame.
the timeframe.
So where will those standards be then? Once they're established?
There
by
would just be
city
rules that are promulgated by the city manager. So where will their home base be? City Hall.
So is there any way that the public would be able to find out that information?
Yeah. So we'll have, A, through our website, B, the first time when someone says, hey, I'm building a new garage and I want to have access to my driveway, I'm going to need to be able to park on the street overnight, and it's going to be during the winter months. Are you okay with this? We'd say, hey, here's the standards, just in case, you're going to do a shoulder season where they're doing the construction, because we prohibit parking between November 15th and April 15th if they want to start early, like this kind of nice weather we're getting.
Oh, we just approved a parking waiver last meeting or the meeting before?
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
when she had received the notice and then came forward with her.
Yeah, that application.
Proposal, so,
Yeah.
the request for that. So I'd say at that point, if somebody receives like the notice that they're parking, on an unimproved surface and come forward with the explanation, it can be reviewed.
Yeah.
And so what this is to have it come to City Hall and let us handle it in one day and not council meets in 2 weeks from now and bring it to you.
Anyone have anything else for section 28? So we'll move on to section 29.
Yeah, so very quickly, the only change to section 29 is we are just adding language to say that you are prohibited from destroying or tampering city utilities. I believe that was in the nuisance area.
I think it was an offensive.
Offenses, yeah. And so our utilities ordinance is chapter 29. And so we felt since this dealt directly with the utilities, it should be restated in the utilities ordinance.
I don't know. I prefer it all under the violation sections because Jay was talking about that. The problem with part of our ordinance system was that it was all over the place. We didn't have a specific, one chapter that was all things that police would enforce.
And I hear what you're saying. People who illegally tap into our water lines, that's going to be Doug Swears and his team that catches that. And we will pull in our attorney for the enforcement. The police isn't involved in that aspect.
We, in section 17, have any reference to the other sections that just say for destruction of, or whatever, of the utilities or tapping into water line C, and it just would link to 29-1.
Let me look into that and I'll get back to you. So you mean cross-referencing.
Cross-reference to say,
Yep.
this section 17-8 is cross-references to other violations that are covered in throughout our ordinances. Then the police could just look in 17 and go, oh, they're messing with utilities. We can charge them under 29-1. Or they're tapping into the water lines, that's in section da-da-da-da-da.
We can look into that. That shouldn't be too hard. We tried to stay away from a lot of cross-references, because 3 years down the road, when another council decides to amend that section, sometimes those cross-references get forgotten about, or, they become little devils in the detail.
Did we already pass by the allowing firearms to be discharged in the city?
17.
Was it? Oh, shoot. That was another one that I meant to say. I don't know if we should be shooting guns in the city. I don't know where we would have an approved range.
Yeah.
If I remember right, that was addressed in the beginning of 17 in the review of it, why that was done. Not because it's what we allow. There is a law passed in 2015, if I'm correct, that doesn't allow the city to regulate that. So if we
Okay.
go back to like the overview of 17, which this was subbed. I'd seen it in the.
Oh, you're
Yeah,
back-
number
you're back
5 on
here.
your screen.
Consistent with the new developments. Oh. What's that?
I'm still in 25. There's no, in this ordinance review.
Discharge of dangerous weapons, 56, section 56, 1756.
I'll have to find that, but I remember that we discussed if somebody wanted to put in a business downtown at one point. And that might have been at Planning Commission. If we would prohibit
An archery range.
like ranges within city, like downtown city limits or within city limits.
So approved range means a gun or archery range with a license, permit, or other approval issued by the state of Michigan, or an approval for a personal range issued by the city's police department pursuant to appropriate regulations promulgated by the police chief, which shall address matters such as setbacks from the property line, backstop, composition, etc. So we do have parcels in the city that do have deep backyards. And those persons, per that state law, have the right to build a range. The city has the right through our police department. I mean, think of like an archery range. To say, yeah, they can, set up a range and go shoot bow and arrow and practice, do target practice.
I had an archery range in my backyard for a while. It was, recurved bow, so I wasn't shooting a gun out the back, but this just feels a little bit like, what's our zoning around it? Are we prepared to permit anything? Are we really just not gonna allow ranges in the city? And clarity on that, knowing what we're getting into before we make this change is just where I'm thinking.
Like I said, I think it all goes back to that law referenced in number 5 in the overview.
And
So
my,
that's,
my guess is that the state law, and state and federal law has stipulations about the requirements of the dimensions and, what's behind and what the offset or the setbacks are. And so if there's none of that represented within the city limits, then that would just by default not be able to take place.
Yeah, I'm saying we should probably figure that out.
well, it says.
So
there
are
has to
you,
be
are
an
you
appro-
asking for staff to obtain a legal opinion from our city attorney?
I'm wondering about zoning and things like that. Like, can we really have ranges? Where are we gonna allow them? How are they gonna get permitted? Is that all figured out already?
That's where I think, I would just like maybe a little bit of better understanding of sub point 5.
because actually, that's not the full paragraph that was in this review. It says, replace the current regulations on firearms and other projectile weapons to be consistent with new developments in state and federal law. A 2015 state statute restricts municipal regulation of firearms in ways that are arguably inconsistent with the city's current ordinance, and changes in the Second Amendment jurisprudence further imposes further limits on municipal weapons ordinance. That's why these were done like this was, because we
Yeah.
can't do it. There's a 2015,
Yeah.
but if you want Nick to explain it, I have no problem, but that's.
And just so we're clear, what Peter read was in your packet, so all council members saw that language.
Yeah, that's the,
What we put on the screen is a summary. These are just visual aids.
so I think it's that 2015 state statute. And I guess all I would really ask is, hey, if Nick has a copy of that, and just shoot it over what he's referring to in that, and then that way I can look at it and just understand why the changes were made, but.
Yeah. Do we have anything else on any of these? All right, so we will move down to item 13, communications from city manager, council, and mayor.
So two things. First, we have applied for a congressional set-aside from U.S. Senator Gary Peters' office to replace the Trestle Trail Bridge. We asked for $1.2 million as part of the application. We had to state what our bare minimum ask was as well, because not all projects get funded. We put our bare minimum at $800,000, just looking at our budget. So we will see where this lands us. And then I'm going to reiterate to council, please, I understand this is a time for council to have discussions, but you are more than willing to email me if you have questions that are in the packet or you need clarification from staff. And then staff is always willing to sit down with, up to 3 members of council, because if we go 4, you're a majority and we're in violation of the Open Meetings Act. Staff is always willing to sit down with up to 3 members and, drill us. Of the comment I made earlier, I stand by. To just rapid fire questions to staff at the podium while they're thick-skinned and they can handle it, in my opinion, is not appropriate. So feel free to reach out to us. We will meet with you, before work, during work, after work, on the weekends. We are the department heads are salaried, so we can put in the extra hours, and we're willing to put in those extra hours. And several of you have taken us up on that, and we appreciate that. That's all.
Parker?
Just a quick follow-up. I know it was mentioned by Councilmember Andrus a couple meetings ago about the public restrooms and the condition of the walls specifically. Since that time, the walls have been repaired, all new drywall, and then obviously the new drywall was painted, but the entire area got a whole repaint job to fix some of those nicks and scratches and things that have occurred since they opened in 2020, so it's been 4 years. So it was about due time, but all that work was accomplished as of this morning, so, yeah.
Nice. Kayla?
Nothing for me.
Tracy?
Nothing for me, thank you.
Doug, anything from you? Nothing further. All right. Teresa?
Nope.
Laura?
Nope.
Bill?
I want to thank Laura, Peter, and Mike for their hard work on the ordinances. I appreciate it very, very much, so thank you very much. Thank staff for all you do also. That's it.
I'm a little tired of getting told what I can and can't talk about in this meeting. I'll just leave it at that.
Mike?
On the Girl Scout property, James did not submit a bid because he truly feels that he was wronged by the city manager. And he had made multiple attempts to contact him, and it was you that were not following back up with him in a timely manner. So I can assure you, he's not looking for the city to do any more projects. So it's a shame.
Peter?
Nothing for me.
So I would just like to thank Mayor Pro Tem Hance for filling in last council meeting. I watched the meeting back, and he did an outstanding job. And I also want to reiterate what Bill said. Thank you to Mike and Peter and Delora for taking all that work. I know it was not easy, and you guys put a lot of time in, and it's just, there's just so much to go through, and I would not relish that job, so I just thank you guys for doing that. And there's nothing else. I will adjourn the meeting at 8:26. Thank you.